bigger Eagles issue? Roster simply not good enough. Coaching in over their heads. I'm Mike Gill. You and me together till 609 403 0973. What's the bigger issue? Frank is watching the show on YouTube. Hello, Frank. Coaching, definitely a bigger issue, says Frank, and I agree. So far, I think the coaching has been abysmal. I've never seen coaching this overmatched at the NFL level. I mean, I watched Rich Kotite, right? We saw Gase, Adam Gase with the Jets. We saw Kotite with the Eagles. We saw guys who just not creative, unimaginative. This coaching staff right now is a big problem with the lack of creativity, the lack of adjustments. I think the lack of adjustments is another humongo problem for this team. They make no adjustments. John Gannon spoke today. The first question out of the chute was, when you guys come off a loss, what's the accountability factor with Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni? How does he go through the game with you guys on a Tuesday and Monday? And what are the conversations from a back and forth standpoint? And Gannon looked like a deer in the headlights. He says, just with Nick and I, the entire defensive staff, we're all in constant communication of, hey, what do we want to do to try to win the game this week? Really? What do we want to try to do to win the game this week? Oh, shucks, buddy. How about, hey, what the heck do we need to do to get our asses back in gear? This is unacceptable. Asking the question of what do we have to do to try to win the game this week is, I'm not taking accountability for the game I just got whipped in the week before. When you finish that game, win or lose, that game sits with you. You go through the minutia of everything. If you won, you go back and watch that game and said, this is what we did well. Let's build on it. If you lose, this is where we got beat. And how do we fix it? Why did we get beat? Well, we got 91 completion percentage against us. What do I need to do to fix that? Not what do we need to do to win the game this week? What the hell do I need to do to fix 91%? And then the 80% and the 80% against Brady, and I got whipped against Dak Prescott. How do I fix that? Not what do I need to do to beat the Lions. First, I got to figure out how to fix the problems I'm having. Because if you keep moving forward to how do I win the next game before you fix the issues of why you lost the game before, you're never going to win. You're never going to win if you don't identify the issues that you're having. And if John Gannon's saying, well, we always come in and say, what do we need to do to try to win the game this week? What calls are we going to call? How are we playing? What are the adjustments? That answer right there tells me this staff doesn't know how to win. This staff doesn't know how to win. They don't have a plan to win. They're planning for games. They're not planning for practice. You win in practice. You win with preparation. You win with technique. John Gannon's telling me, what do we got to do to try to win the game this week? Not, what did we do wrong last week that I need to fix? Because if Nick Sirianni comes to John Gannon and the question is, what did Nick Sirianni say to you? What does he say to you guys? He sat us down and he showed us we are getting beat here, here, and here. And this is why. Our linebackers' technique, terrible in pass coverage. Our linebackers' technique, they don't step up and defend the run. This team doesn't know how to win. This staff doesn't know how to win. That answer there told me exactly that. He goes on to say, anytime you come back in after the game, win or lose, you're talking about, hey, did we get those things done? Did we make adjustments? Where can we play better? How can we set the game plan up a little bit better? High accountability. In no part there does it say, what did we do wrong? Why did we lose? Why did they get 91%? What is wrong with our technique? What is wrong with our game plan? Not, hey, did we get those things done? No, of course you didn't get those things done. You gave up 91%. Jeez. Derek Elders watching on YouTube. Gannon sucks. The D is so predictable. They form up and just stand there. They make average quarterbacks Hall of Famers. Oh, Derek, that's first off. Tom Brady's pretty good. Patrick Mahomes is pretty good. Dak Prescott is pretty good. Derek Carr is pretty good. They made pretty good play. Okay, they made the 4 quarterbacks who were really good, they made them look really, really good. They didn't make Matt Ryan look good. They didn't make Jimmy Garoppolo look good. They didn't make Sam Darnold look good. So I don't agree with what you just said there, Derek, that they make average quarterback Hall of Famers. No, they are making Hall of Fame players Hall of Famers, but they're doing it at an exorbitant level. 609-403-0973. Brett, do you see this team making drastic coaching changes this offseason? Brett, I typically would not be a fan of a one-and-done coach. If every week continues to be down this road where they are just outsmarted, outclassed, outcoached, outprepared, I'm not saying they lose this team because they're outmanned or out-talented. In years past, you think they're hurt, they're outmanned. This team is not out-talented right now. They're out-prepared. So to answer your question, if they continue to look out-prepared each week like they have in 5 weeks this year, then I don't think it looks good for this group. I hope that changes. Sports Bash is brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan, the all-new Matt Blatt Nissan, Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, online, mattblattnissan.com. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Jeff checks in. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's got to go, brah. Jeff, that's not their biggest problem. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside being on this team right now is not this team's biggest issue. Yeah, he stinks. He's not giving you anything. He's not hurting you, though. They got much bigger fish to fry than J.J. Arcega-Whiteside being on the team. Hey, Sixers Knicks tonight when we come back. MKB's in the house. We'll talk a little Sixers Knicks with him. The World Series a little bit later. Jeff Nadeau. Football at 4. Who's in? Who's out? All right, Sixers and Knicks tonight, right here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Michael Kasky-Blomain, CBS Sports, covers the NBA, and the Sixers set to join us right now as Sixers-Knicks is all of a sudden turned into a fun, big game, not in terms of the playoff situation we're early in the season, but both these teams have playoff aspirations. Knicks a much different team than the one we saw get bounced out by the Hawks in the playoffs last year. Obviously, Sixers have a lot of questions as well. What's going on, MKB?
MG, what's up, man?
All is good. We got the Sixers Knicks tonight. The Knicks seemingly are back. They added Kemba Walker to a team that had trouble scoring last year. So this could be an interesting game tonight. Let me get your thoughts on this Knicks team. What have you seen so far that feel like they have, added enough to be a team that can get out of that first round now?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I think the Knicks had a great offseason. It kind of flew under the radar a little bit. But to me, two additions. You hit on the one, obviously, Kemba Walker, and then signing Evan Fournier in free agency. I thought those were two huge additions that really addressed major issues for the Knicks last year. They were a defensive-minded team that struggled at times to generate offense outside of Julius Randle. And I think by adding those two guys, you add two good perimeter scorers, guys that can space the floor for Julius, and Kemba, a guy that can, create offense for himself and others. And then just the development of RJ Barrett. They brought back Alec Burks, who obviously we know from his days as a Sixer can knock shots down. So to me, the Knicks are just, they were a good team last year. They're still a good defensive team, but they're more well-rounded, especially on the offensive end, which obviously makes them, a more dangerous team this year.
All right, so they were a team last year. They were a top 4 seed. They got beat by the Hawks, but would you say right now, I know we're very early. I'm not talking about record, they're both 2-1, but just looking at these two teams' eye tests, is New York ahead of where Philly is?
I don't think so, Mike. I mean, I think that the top high-end talent still favors the Sixers. Obviously, when you're talking about Joel, he's the best player between the two teams. And I think with, Tobias, the way Seth Curry's been playing, and then obviously, with Ben's situation, whether or not he joins the team or if he's ultimately moved and they get some pieces back, I think the Sixers still have the more high-end talent. So, if they met in a series that started tomorrow, even without Ben playing, I would still take the Sixers. But I do think the Knicks are the type of team that could, gel over the course of the season and be the type of team that, no one really wants to face by the time the playoffs actually roll around.
All right, so you mentioned the top-end talent. One of those guys is not here, obviously, and that is Ben Simmons. Now, yesterday, it was reported that the team has stopped fining him. So is that a significant step in this process, or is it just kind of something that had to be done because of what he said he's going through?
Yeah, it's really tough to read, Mike, and it's kind of a touchy subject to talk about. Obviously, you don't want to be insensitive, but at the same time, you have to realize like that language is written into the CBA in terms of, if a player is dealing with mental issues and things like that, that the money can't be withheld. And, it would be naive of anyone to think that Ben or Rich Paul or the Clutch camp wasn't aware of that. So I think to me, it's kind of still to be determined whether or not this is a serious thing where Ben is, kind of finally looking inward, addressing some of the issues that have kind of bogged him down on the court and seriously, looking to address them, or if it's a situation where, his camp knew that this was a way for him to potentially stop getting fined and missing out on those game checks while still being away from the Sixers and not playing for, an extended amount of time. Again, I'm not trying to be pessimistic about the situation, but I think at this point, it's still up in the air which way it's really going to go.
Well, Daryl Morey on Sunday before that game mentioned that, hey, we're giving them all the resources, and right now we feel like, we want to get him back on the court whenever he's ready to go. I mean, it doesn't sound like Morey is blinking at all. It almost sounds like, both, I don't want to say Simmons side, you haven't heard much from them recently, but that the Sixers feel more inclined that the resolution is that he is going to stay. Do you get that feeling?
I think it's just an inevitability almost at this point, Mike, in terms of, this current absence that Ben's going through can't last indefinitely. Ultimately, he's going to have to, re-report to the team. And like you said, there's been no, rush or movement or, urgency on the side of the Sixers to find a deal. I'm sure you've seen the December 15th date get thrown out recently in terms of that being the date where players that just signed to new teams over the offseason can be moved. There have been some suggestions in reporting that Daryl could wait until at least that date to start to consider trades because it'll obviously, expand the market of potentially available players. So, in the short term, there's no movement on the trade front. And I think ultimately the Sixers are, they have their heels dug in. They're trying to help Ben out now with this, the issues that he's dealing with. But when that is, resolved, they're still expecting him to come back to the team and play in games and practices.
Michael Kasky-Blomain, CBS Sports, joins us here. Sixers Knicks tonight. Let me get your take on, we talk about what we saw from Joel Embiid last year. He was second in the MVP. Has his game evolved even more? What are you seeing from Embiid early on in this season?
Yeah, it's a little tough to tell so far, Mike. I think obviously you're seeing a continuation of Joel being more comfortable with the ball in his hands and handling double teams. He's averaging 5 assists per game so far over the first 3, which is, a career high by far. He's averaged 3.1 assists per game over his career. He's only averaging just over a turnover per game compared to around 3 for his career also. So he's, so far I think the offense needed some guys to step up with Ben out in terms of generating open opportunities for the other guys, finding looks for guys like Danny and Seth, which is something that, Ben did really well last year. And I think Joel has taken a little bit of that playmaking responsibility onto his own plate. We saw just yesterday, I think in the first quarter against Oklahoma City, or 2 days ago, I think he had 4 assists to Seth in that first quarter alone. So, I think we're seeing him expand that part of his game. I would like to see him, punish guys on the low post a little bit more than he's done so far. I feel like a lot of their offense has involved him, around the perimeter, top of the key, dribble handoff things. I think they're at their best when he is, down in the post and taking advantage of mismatches down there. But overall, it looks like Joel is, the same guy as last year, potentially even in a little bit better shape, which could help him, the wear and tear over the course of the season. So as long as he can stay healthy, to me, he's right there in the thick of the MVP conversation again this season.
What's with this knee situation? Is this a carryover from the meniscus in the playoffs last year? Something totally new? Doc kind of downplayed it.
Yeah, Joel said in the first game of the season he took a knee to the knee. It was the right knee, which is the knee that he was dealing with last offseason. I think it's the Sixers have been pretty tight-lipped about it, but also pretty dismissive of it. So I don't think it's something that to worry about. But that's something all season. Joel opted over the offseason not to get a surgery on that meniscus to let it heal, naturally. So I think that's just going to be something that, unfortunately, we're going to have to monitor over the course of the year to make sure that it doesn't, get re-inflamed, re-injured or anything like that. But I think this particular situation was just kind of a fluke knee to knee that he took in the first game and resulted in some soreness over the past couple of games.
Well, obviously, Maury says we like what this team looks like. Korkmaz has gotten better. I think Maxey has certainly added a little bit. But in the end, Michael, doesn't this team still have the same problem? They don't have a guy to get a bucket late in the game?
Yeah, 100%, Mike. I think we saw that in the Nets game, which, I was obviously there for the home opener where they were dominating for 3.5 quarters of that game. And then over the final 5 minutes, they did not score a field goal. They scored 1 total point, which came on a Seth Curry free throw. And it was just tough. And that's the issue when you have your best player and your go-to guy be a post player in today's NBA. It's a little bit more difficult to run an offense through a post player in clutch time than it is to do so through a guard on the perimeter. And like you said, Maxey's shown development. Korkmaz is obviously taking a step forward as a playmaker, but they still do, like you said, there's that situation in clutch time where they don't have a guy on the perimeter that you can say, here's the ball, here's a high screen, go make something happen.
Right.
Tobias Harris still isn't that guy. He struggled down the stretch to do that. So yeah, it's a deeper team, I think, but still with the same, a fundamental issue that's carried over for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, getting Ben Simmons back isn't going to change that because he's not that guy either. So you got that. I want to ask you about their defense, though, without Ben Simmons. Has it had a drop-off? I mean, is it a noticeable drop-off? Because I think a lot of people said, well, what's going to happen with Ben not there defensively? It's only 3 games, but
yeah, I do think there's been a drop-off, Mike. And like you said, it's only been 3 games, and 2 of those games were against, obviously, the Pelicans and the Thunder, who are arguably, 2 of the worst teams in the league. I think the Nets game was the real test where you could tell. And to me, it was pretty evident that they missed Ben out there. You start the game with Danny Green on Kevin Durant, and Durant, he didn't have a crazy game. I think he finished with 29, but he also had 10 assists and like 10 or 12 rebounds. He basically just was able to do whatever he wanted to do on the offensive end. And that's the issue you have there. If Danny Green is your second best perimeter defender, you're in pretty good shape. But if he's, tasked to be your best perimeter defender and go against a guy like Kevin Durant or go against a guy like Trae Young, like we saw in the playoffs last year, it's just not a great recipe for success on that end of the floor. And Matisse, as great as he is on that end, so far this season, he still hasn't shown the offensive development that he's needed to show to be the type of guy that could play, 35, 40 minutes out there and be a two-way player, kind of like Danny has developed into. So, it's a situation where you're going to get into some of these games with players that are all-star MVP caliber level guys like Durant, and you just don't have the answer on the defensive end. And I think it's, over the course of the season, it's his absence, the longer it stretches, is going to, become more noticeable on that end.
What you said about Thibault, yeah. I mean, you were hoping that he came back with a little bit more consistent of a shot. That shot looks to have regressed a little bit, not gotten better, which is odd considering he played in the offseason for Australia. Michael Kasky, Blomain, CBS Sports tonight. The Sixers and the Knicks. You can listen to the game on 97.3 ESPN. It's a 7:30 start. Tom McGinnis with the call. MKB, I'll see you soon, man.
Thanks, Mike. Take it easy, man.
All right, there he goes. MKB, CBS Sports here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Download the app in the Apple Store or Google Play. It is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Jeff Nadeau's here on the other side. His favorite bets to jump on early this week. He's had a great year in the college football ranks. I hope you've been listening to a lot of the picks he's been giving you. We'll give you the thoughts on some of the games that get on early this week. Also, I'm going to clean out the text board in about 25 minutes. 609 403 0973. Eagles, not enough talent. Coach overmatched. Which one is it? 609 403 0973. Download the free mobile app. You can DM me through the phone, direct message me right through the free mobile app. You can get it free in the Apple Store or Google Play. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Gill Show. Watch the show live on our YouTube channel, 97.3 ESPN. All right, hour two of the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill. What's up, everybody? Hopefully you're enjoying your Tuesday. We have week 7 in the NFL in the books. We've also got the World Series tonight. We've got Sixers-Knicks. The Knicks are back, baby. It's a good league when the Knicks are back. It's only been about 30 years. The Knicks and the Cowboys, it's taken them a while, but they're both back on top. It feels like my childhood again there, Jeff Nadeau. Now I'm 44. So I remember when the Knicks were half decent and the Cowboys were like really good. But it's been a long time since those two teams have been back on top.
Yeah, I remember as a kid they were really good. I used to, weirdly enough, I used to love those Knicks teams when I was a kid. You know, the Charlie Ward, John Starks, Allen Houston teams, Anthony Mason, Charles Oakley, Patrick Ewing. Yeah, I used to really like those teams. They were hard-headed teams, kind of like the one they have now. That's one thing about basketball in New York. You know, I've always been a fan of it, and I like those teams back then. I actually like this team now. I have nothing bad to say. I like the kind of the blue collar attitude they have. So yeah, it's good when the Knicks are good.
Yeah, it's good tonight. 7:30, 97.3 ESPN. We'll have the game for you here. Sixers and the Knicks, both teams 2-1 in the young season. I got to get your thoughts on where the Eagles are because 7 games in, that game the other day. Now, I'll ask this question, all right? Does this team not have enough talent, or are they supremely unprepared?
That's a great question. I think, you know, and I don't –
And I'm not saying talent like Super Bowl talent, but they're not competitive.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting, Mike. I actually had a similar conversation with a friend of mine. You know, we're both big Eagle fans who go to the games together, and we talked about, you know, he asked me a question of, you know, position by position, he said, who are you keeping on this team? Right. And I had a hard time finding 5 guys. And I mean that wholeheartedly. I think this is a pretty bad football team. But I will say on defense, I think, you know, they have the offensive line. There's some things to like about what they do. I think the bigger thing is coaching now. I think this coach is completely out of his gourd. I think he has no idea what he's doing. I think it's clear. And if you look at the body language of these guys, it's clear, Mike, that they don't really – they're not on the same page. I mean, look at Jason Kelsey during games. You know, he's throwing his hands up. Fletcher Cox. I mean, all these veteran guys. Mike, let me ask you a question. Did you see Zach Ertz score that touchdown on Sunday?
It's funny you bring that up.
Did he look a lot faster to you?
The guy, he not only looked faster, he didn't have anybody near him. He must have been like, oh, my God, I caught the – you know, what was his nickname here? No Yak Zach. Every time he caught the ball, he had somebody draped on his back. Well, the other day, he caught that ball and took off. I mean, must have been like – it was like Andy Dufresne breaking out of Shawshank. He was like, oh, my God, there's nobody around me.
Mike, it's interesting what a good scheme will do for you. I mean, look at – and I don't want to bring this name up, but I'm going to bring it up. And Carson's playing pretty well, Mike. I got to say. I mean, they're getting better.
He is. So, now, I funny because I know and I saw some of your tweets, and I'm like, you know, saying everybody's in the fire this guy, fire that guy, fire this guy crowd, okay? We're all frustrated, so our immediate is fire, fire, fire. They fired Peterson. They fired Schwartz. They got rid of Wentz. They did what everybody asked, and it hasn't worked.
Well, Mike, the problem is when you do that stuff, you hope that they go out and get the right people to come in and fix things. Now, the big issue is they fired certain people, but they didn't fire the most important person. And Mike, I know, you know, you have the kind of the Roseman thought, but look, it's become stale here. It's time to move on.
Well, that I'll agree with. You know, like, I don't have a problem saying the ideas are stale. It's time. I'm just not in the blame game of this is the epic reason. But I have no problem moving on from Roseman by saying, look, you're here 20 years. In 20 years, Jeff Nadeau, they have had 5 losing seasons. 5.
Right.
There's not too many teams in the NFL that can say that. They've only had back-to-back losing seasons.
But Mike,
one time.
But this is why this argument won't make sense. Because, and not that I shouldn't say it doesn't make sense, but if that's how they think, then why'd you fire Doug Peterson? Because he just won a Super Bowl. If you have that thing, why'd you fire him so quick?
Well, I don't know that they fired him because they wanted to fire him. I think they fired him because he didn't want to comply with some of the things they wanted.
Mike, the thing about this team that really makes me sick, it's actually disturbing, actually. I've never seen a team in sports, okay, at any level, any league, whatever. I've never seen a team that says they basically come out and say, we don't care about certain position groups. I've never seen a team mismanage the linebackers like this team.
Well,
like,
that's an Andy Reid thing, though. And look what's happening in Kansas City right now. They're going through the same problem.
It's bad thinking long term. Mike, also, I've never seen a team waste more roster spots than this one. I mean, what does J.J. Arcega-Whiteside have to do to get cut from this team? What is some of these guys on this roster? Why are they on this roster?
Yeah, well, I mean,
This
J.J.
Mike, this is a team that tells you we have Arcega-Whiteside here because he's a good special teamer. They're not good at special teams.
No, you're right. Like, there are certain guys, like this guy, messaged earlier, JJ got to go, bro. And I'm saying, yeah, he's got to go, but he's not helping or hurting. He's not doing anything. I mean, he's just a useless piece. They got a lot of useless pieces on this team. Here's the one thing, like you said earlier, like somebody asked this question a little while ago, man, way back it might have been on the text board. He basically said this team doesn't have any Pro Bowlers or top 10 players, which it's kind of weird. Like, you go around this team, okay? Every team in the league would take Lane Johnson, right?
Yeah.
The entire offensive line. I think if you said you could have these guys, every team would say, I'll take them. Smith has been good, not great. I mean, I'm a little disappointed in Smith.
I told you in the offseason, they needed a veteran receiver, and they don't have one. Smith is a good second option right now, but he's not the main guy. He can't be the main guy right now.
Can't be the main guy. You're absolutely right.
Another guy. And that's why I pleaded, go out and get a veteran receiver.
Goddard, 3 catches, 66 yards. He's averaging 23 yards a catch. They can't figure out how to use him. They can't figure out how to use Watson. They don't know what the hell to do with Rieger. They finally figured out what to do with Sanders for a drive, and then he got hurt, and they completely got away from that. That tells me that the coach is more of the problem than it is the players, because if you scheme them the right way, they have been successful. His problem is he has been so inconsistent with the game plan that he is not allowing these guys to be the players that they can be. Same with the defensive side of the ball. I said earlier, they are relying on a position that is the worst. If you told me you can have Sweat, Fletcher, Javon, Barnett sucks. You can have him. He's horrible. Slay, Nelson, those guys you can win games. I'm not saying you're winning the Super Bowl, but you can win games. The problem is, instead of saying, well, I got Slay, Nelson, I'm going to put more on them, he's putting all on the plates of his worst players instead of his best players.
Yeah, and, another thing that goes hand in hand with the personnel that, that they're continuing to trot out there, like Ryan Kerrigan, for instance. Okay, this is a team that drafted Terry and Jackson, Milton Williams, all these defensive linemen, yet you're letting him play. This guy has 1 tackle in the season. Cut him already.
He takes on the blocks. That's what Sirianni said the other day anyway.
Listen, the body language of this team is a team that doesn't seem like they're prepared. They don't seem like they care. And as you said, they're not scheming these players correctly.
Right. And when now you got this guy's frustrated, the coach says, I'm frustrated, he's frustrated, we're all frustrated. And then he throws out, I hate this line. We're doing everything we can to figure it out. If you're saying you're doing everything, you haven't identified the issue. It's not everything. It's you and him. You got to say what the problems are. Now, we're doing everything to identify. That's just a general statement of, yeah. That means you haven't figured out what your problems are, and that's bad.
And what happens here, Mike, is if they're getting, let's say they're improving, right? They're doing things, but they're going backwards, right? So they played like decent in the first 2 or 3 games, and now they're going significantly backwards. They're just getting worse and worse as the season goes on. I mean, we're going into this weekend and saying they might lose to Detroit, because I'll tell you one thing about Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. They play 10 times harder than the Philadelphia Eagles do. So they better watch themselves. Mike, I will say this, and I'll give you credit, and I'll give what you said credit. This is why it's important that you got to move on from Roseman. And I think they move on from this coaching staff. I think this coaching staff is a short leash. I really do. Wow. I think if you lose 10 games, this guy's gone. These 3 picks coming up.
That means you won 7 games, by the way, which is 3 more than the year before.
12 games. Yeah, 12 games, let's say.
Okay.
These are 3 there's going to be 3 really good players, okay? I think it's pretty clear at this point you're probably going to have to get a quarterback. I think – and I've said before, I'm getting Matt Corral from them. The other 2 positions need to be a a defensive end linebacker hybrid type of guy. And you need to get another safety, because if you can get another safety, Mike, your secondary is Slay, Nelson, Maddox, who's played really well.
I hate to say it because he went to Pitt, but you're right.
Anthony Harris and let's say Kyle Hamilton you get from Notre Dame. That is a really good secondary. Or if you don't get Hamilton and you get Stingley or Ahmad Gardner or
the problem, Nelson and Harris, the issue with them, they're both on one. These guys are all on 1 year. Like, they basically brought these guys in on 1 year deals just to fill. They needed a corner desperately.
I think you could keep Harris. If Nelson moves on, so be it. That's where you get Elam or somebody in there. You get a corner and you get a linebacker and you get a quarterback. Because, Mike, again, you know better than me. This kid, nice kid. You like him. I think he's a stopgap guy. I think he's becoming more and more good. But it's hard to know because this guy's scheming. Let me ask you, Mike, if he's in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, does the kid look different?
Of course. I mean, it's malpractice. The game plan, look, I'm a pretty rational guy. I hate to be the irrational guy. I take a step back, right? Even with him calling for declining the penalty the other day, I tried to say, all right, let me before I fire off something, what would be the reason? And I can't, like, okay, well, somebody tweeted back at me and said the percentages of getting 4th and 4 are better than the
with this analytic crap.
Right.
Sometimes
I'm saying,
you gotta have common sense, Mike.
And I said, listen, that to me is no good because Vegas took their offense off the field. They were punting the ball there. Sirianni's answer was, well, I would have gone for it in that situation. Well, that's fine and dandy for you. They didn't go for it, you jackass.
That was a microcosm of them as a team. They're led by a guy, and their whole coaching staff is like this. Like, Mike, what do some of these coaches do on a daily? Like, what does Shane Steichen do on a daily basis? What's the linebackers coach of this team do on a daily basis? What do these people do every day, Mike?
Well, the linebackers coach, by the way, he's like 27 years old. I mean,
they're all these kids. They're
just overwhelmed right now.
Yeah. They're all these analytic geeks that think that you can take that and bring that. I see it in gambling all the time. These analytic people who they care about nothing but numbers and what percentages say. It doesn't matter that the whole team's out. The numbers say something else. Hey, idiot. That's not how things work. Sometimes you got to lose a little common sense. You ever notice, Mike, the smartest people in the world, they can never last in the real world. They don't have any street smarts. They have no common sense. This analytic stuff, there's no sense in it. It's just, what I would do. Hey, we're not doing what you would do. A normal team there wouldn't go for it. So,
right. And I love the fact that the guy coaching the Raiders is just some gabagoo that they found off the sideline and said, yo, you're in charge. All right. And he stands on the sideline with his arms folded and lets everybody else do the work. Sirianni's in over his head. He said it after the game. Well, I don't watch the defense during the week. I'm putting the offensive coordinator. You're not the offensive coordinator. You're the freaking head coach, buddy.
It's it's like Ed Orgeron when he was at LSU. Ed Orgeron's not a great coach. Everybody knows that, but he won a national title. He just stood there. He's a good recruiter. He's a good rival guy. People want to play for him. I'd much rather have a guy like that over an analytic geek like Nick Sirianni who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. But hey, the problem is you're not.
Well, it's a shame because, and look, I'm not saying he's done, but I'm not feeling good. But I will say this for Gannon's sake. You hired a guy who you knew played cover 2, and you gave him a roster that doesn't have cover 2 talent. So, Mike, you want the guy, you hired a guy for what he does, and now you're saying, I hired you for this, but I want you to do that. That's just an asinine hire then.
Mike, it's been a long odyssey. And I look back to when I was a young child, and I look back at when I fell in love with the Philadelphia Eagles. It was Jim Johnson and that defense. And I watched last night. Did you watch the Saints? Do you see them play defense? Dennis Allen. You see how he plays defense? Why can't we have that here ever? Why can't we return to that time where linebackers meant something? There was a little something. They had corners that just played up on you and hit you. Like, where's the Corey Simons on this team? Where's the, ND Kaluz on this team? Where's just these tough guys that just get after you? Where's the Carlos Emmons, the Jeremiah Trotters, the Bobby Taylors? They don't have those type of guys. I'm sick of this stupid sticks crap. They had it the last regime, Chip Kelly, all these guys. I want the Jim Johnson defense again. The Dennis Allen, the hard hitting, we're going to blitz, and we're going to hit you in the freaking mouth. That's what I want.
All right. Well, it's not going to happen this year. Sorry.
Yeah, it sucks.
Good. No, I agree. Like the way they're playing defense right now with the personnel they have, it doesn't add up. Like you're playing cover 2 with no linebackers, dude. No, your best players are Slay, Nelson, and your line. You go after the quarterback and say, Slay and Nelson, I'm putting this game on you. You don't say Singleton and TJ Edwards, I'm counting on you today. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
I mean, keep in mind, Mike, Darren Waller did not play on Sunday.
All right.
mean, they still couldn't stop him. Mike, it was so fun in the broadcast. Kenny Albert and the other guy were talking about
Vilma.
they're talking about how this defense, the goal is they don't want to get beat deep. Next play, they get beat deep on that 3rd and 15 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it's just
that's like that. The whole philosophy of Gannon and these guys is it's like baseball now. A single's no good. Well, you got to hit a double or a home run. Mm-hmm. And that's football now. It's, I don't care if you get 3, 8, 7, 9.
We just
you got to put together 15 play drives to score on us. And you're bound to make a mistake if you got to go that long. Well, no one's making mistakes against this team right now. There's your problem. You got no playmakers on that side of the ball. So they are favored this week, though. But you're right. If they lose to the Lions, I think that's a franchise-altering type of loss.
Yeah, and again, I think it's probable. Actually, I think it's surely possible. I think it's probable.
What do you think of that line? 3.5.
Yeah, I think the Lions, they played well, man. DeAndre Swift's a tough Philly kid.
If the Eagles played the Rams, they would get buried. The Lions were beating the Rams in the 4th quarter. So that tells me all you need to know there.
Mike, sometimes you have a team that just plays hard, man. We saw it with the Dolphins a couple years ago. First year with Flores. Look, Dan Campbell, you hire him. You're like, why you hire him for? These guys like playing for this guy. He's passionate. He cares. He's exactly like the coach last week. I'd take a coach over Dan Campbell over this goof we have any day of the week. Any day of the week. And I'll tell you what, Jared Goff, I mean, kids throwing a ball around. They got a good offensive line. They're going to run the ball down the Eagles' throats. That's what the Detroit Lions do. Swift is utilized the correct way. That's how you use a good running back. Now, I will say
both those guys, Williams too.
Yeah, I think this is a good over game. I don't think either defense can stop the opposing offense. We know the Eagles will throw. And with Miles Sanders out, now Sirianni can justify why he's throwing so much. Well, we don't have our back. We don't have our guy, And it's funny, too, because, he doesn't even know how to utilize Boston Scott as your kind of regular back, and Gainwell's more of your, out of the backfield catching passes kind of. Gainwell shouldn't be used, 20 times. That's not the kind of back he is. He doesn't even understand that.
No, you're right. I mean, obviously, he is, to me, the game plan is very one-dimensional. He doesn't have the adjustments. He doesn't know how to get the guys involved. Watkins doesn't know what to do with him, doesn't know what to do with Rieger, hasn't figured out how to get the tight end involved at all. That's your best weapon on this offense, putting way too much in the plate of young players. You got a veteran offensive line. You had 2 veteran tight ends and didn't know what to do with them. Malpracticed these game plans so far.
Let me ask you, Mike. They lose Sunday. Let's say they lose 27-17 Sunday. I mean, I don't know how you can justify this guy going forward. I don't know if you can justify him now.
When was the fastest somebody has been fired?
That's my question. I don't know.
You fired someone 8 games into their NFL career.
In college, I saw Texas Tech fired Matt Wells yesterday, which, what are you, 8 games into the season? And he's been there, I think, 2 or 3 years. But this is a first-year guy. At what point do you just say, this guy's completely lost control? The body language is a complete mess.
Yeah. It's frustrating because you had new youth feel like, all right, let's start from scratch. And
Mike,
this
season was
never
supposed to feel with this guy. This guy.
Well, this season was supposed to be, hey, we got no expectations. It was good. Last year was dreadful. That was awful to watch. It was aesthetically the most unpleasing season of all time last year. Every week was painful. This year it was, okay, no expectations. Young quarterback, number 1 pick, Smith. Let's have some fun and see what this offense looks like. And this offense looks horrible.
Last thing I'll say, and then I know you got to wrap it up. The other reason that Howie has to go is because it's killing your ability to hire the right coach, man. Brandon Staley, if Howie's not here, I think is here. You know what Brandon Staley is going to do this year, Mike? He's going to win Coach of the Year. So that's the kind of guy you could have got, but you weren't able to get him. So you have to settle for these people that are not qualified to be head coaches, and that's what you have with Sirianni. You have to move on from this guy. We can't keep doing this. And I'm almost with them where I am with the Sixers. I can't keep watching this crap. I can't.
All right, Jeff Nadeau. Are you in on anything early this week? What do you like?
I haven't been anything in the NFL yet, Mike. College, I have a couple of games. Quickly, I'll just throw them out. I'll just throw one out actually right now. Fresno State is going to beat San Diego State. This is a big game on the West Coast this week. One undefeated team in San Diego State. Mike, listen, sometimes you just have to go with the best quarterback, the team that's challenged themselves. Fresno's played some really tough opponents, some tough games. They have a great quarterback who I think is going to be a good NFL quarterback. I think they beat San Diego State this week. I also like Michigan State to beat Michigan. Big game in a Big Ten. I don't know why they're getting 4 points.
Now, I thought for sure you were going to come firing with this Thursday night ECU South Florida game.
I actually just was on ECU radio right before you, and they obviously asked me about this game. Yeah, it's a lot of points. I'm not laying 10 with ECU. This team, nice little short underdog or a dog, but or a short favorite or an underdog, but I'm not laying 10 with them. South Florida's playing better. Just beat up Temple. I'm not running to the win of the bet on that, but the early week games are tough.
All right, Jeff Nadeau's back on Thursday. We'll go through the card a little bit more. By the way, Michigan State is a plus 4.5 at home. You like that?
Yeah, I don't get that line at all.
Yeah, Michigan State 7-0, Michigan 7-0. By the way, you can hear that game at noon right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Jeff, I'll see you Thursday, man.
Okay, Mike. See you then. Thank you.
Take care. All right, Jeff Nadeau. At Jeff Nadeau on Twitter. You can follow him there. And our conversations here on the Sports Bash are brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit, find out how. PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. We got a busy weekend for you coming up in the college football world. We'll talk a little college later on in the week. By the way, former Lion Jerry Ball will join me on Thursday. You remember Jerry Ball, the big nose tackle? Jerry Ball on Thursday's show. Joe Valerio tomorrow for our weekly conversation. Just talking football, cup of Joe with Joe Valerio. Always enjoy that. Coming up, football at 4, Andrew DeCecco. What's the identity of this team with the coaching staff? Do they have one? Do they want one? Do they know what it is? Do they know what they want to be? 609-403-0973. I promised I would get to your text, and I will. I promise I will get to your video messages, and I will. I also will get to all of your messages on the free mobile app. If you're listening on the app, you can message us through the app. Download the app in the Apple Store or Google Play. All right, coming up, Sixers Knicks tonight, by the way, on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Follow me on Twitter, at Mike Gill Show. And, of course, right here on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. All right, through the free mobile app, Jay in Dennisville chimes in. Says, I feel like we hired Nick in effort to keep Wentz, like Wentz wants to go to Indianapolis, so we'll bring Indianapolis to Philly. He was hired before we traded Wentz. That's an interesting point here. Hey, this is a guy that Frank Reich trusts. Let's bring him here, and maybe that'll make Wentz kind of change his mind. Isn't it unbelievable that the the Eagles and the Sixers are both going through guys who just simply don't want to be here anymore? And then, of course, the fans' reaction is, well, good, then get rid of them. Isn't the reaction ever like, whoa. Let's try to salvage this. Let's try to fix this. Because right now, I bet you'd take Carson Wentz back. Like, we're so quick to say, you don't want to be here? Oh, we want a Philly guy. You don't want to be in Philly? Get rid of him. Well, maybe he just thinks you're a jerk. I mean, you're allowed to look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, you know what? I am a tough fan, but sometimes maybe it's me. Maybe it's my fault. I'm not saying it's your fault, but Carson Wentz didn't want to be here. Ben Simmons doesn't want to be here. This guy said, well, the Eagles tried to bring a coach in here that would convince Wentz maybe to want to stay, and Wentz said, no, I want to go. I want to get out of here. And now Wentz is gone and played. Look, he's not the MVP that he was in 2017. But he's been pretty darn good so far this year, man. And that team's banged up. That team's starting to move in the right direction. All of a sudden, Indianapolis, they're 3-4. They got the Jets, Jags coming up the next couple of weeks here. Texans, Jags again. Wentz has played pretty well. I mean, he's not perfect. Don't question about it. He made that throw the other night, still trying to do too much. 11 touchdowns. He's trying to do too much. He throws that thing into the red zone. It's his first interception of the season for Carson Wentz. First interception of the season for Carson Wentz. He's averaging 7.7 yards a pass. The numbers are back up. His quarterback rating's 102. 11 touchdowns, 1 pick. I think one problem with Wentz, too many sacks, holds onto the ball a little too long, inaccuracy, he's 64%. Like to see that a little bit higher, around 67, 68. But Wentz has bounced back. Is he great? No, he's not Tom Brady. Not Aaron Rodgers. He's definitely better than the guy we got right now. 609-403-0973. Thanks to Jay, who's listening on the free mobile app from Dennisville, for that text message on the app. We'll read off some more of those throughout the show as well. Over on the text board, Mike, I like Gainwell, but he cannot pick up the blitz. I like Hurts, but he cannot throw accurately deep. The plays design take too long to develop, making Hurts run more often. The defense is vanilla. Barnett is not good. Linebackers, ha, but they do try. Schwartz and have loved this defense. This whole coaching staff should be gone. Gainwell, rookie. They don't block very well. He's a third down back. He shouldn't be asked to block. Hurts's inaccuracies have hurt this team at times. The play design, horrible. Defense, horrendous. Barnett, waste of talent, first-round pick, terrible. All of the things that you mentioned in here, I can't disagree. Like, normally I get a text and I'm like, all right, you're trying to, be the guy who's just disagreeing with the guy on the radio. No, you said everything lockstep with me, buddy. You're good. 609-403-0973. Mike, the coach and GM got to go. Imagine what an average coach could do with this roster. Yeah, I mean, if Doug Peterson's here and Jim Schwartz, you might be a 500 team right now. I say 500. I don't know that that's accurate. I might have to take that comment back. I think you beat the 49ers. The 49er injuries have just been too much. I thought they would be really improved with a lot of guys coming back, but then they got hurt again. They got a bunch of guys hurt again. But really, in the 5 losses, that's the only game. So I think Philadelphia right now should be 3-4. They're 2-5, so they're not that off of where they should be. They're only a minus 26. So it says they're the problem is they've given up way more points than they should defensively. I don't know how they're only a minus 26. That's unbelievable. But to give up 40 points in 2 games in a row, I mean, come on. What a Jekyll and Hyde season this has been so far. My God. Cole from Long Beach Island. It's an amazing that after week 1, the Eagles' expectations went through the roof, and now you're talking about firing Sirianni if he loses to Detroit. No, I'm not talking about that. Yes, people have wondered. I think, though, if they lose to Detroit, the ownership group has got to start wondering, like, we lost to the team that hasn't won a game yet. You start to turn into kind of a laughing stock all of a sudden, right? 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash, 609-403-0973. Mike, that wasn't a pick. It was ruled a fumble. What, the Wentz throw the other night? All right, so that wasn't an interception, but he only has 1 interception on the year. Thanks, Shano. And that was a play. I know everyone's like, oh, he's trying too hard. This is the play. It almost felt like he had the guy open in the back of the end zone and that he was trying to get him the ball and somebody hit him from the backside and caused that ball to kind of just poof like out of his hand. Could be wrong. Just the way like I kind of saw it because everybody's like, hey, let's easily pounce on Carson Wentz for not learning how to just live to fight another play. Let me go over to the video stream. There's some messages coming in over there. Kyle Dubray, I still see the same problems the last few years. Last year, new face, same coaching. I still see the same problems as last year. I can't agree with you there, Kyle. Their offensive line is significantly better than last year. They had all sorts of problems on the offensive line last year. They did not have a receiver that could get open last year. Not one. They got receivers. The play design for these receivers stinks. The defense last year did not have near the talent in the secondary. I mean, you were playing with Avonte Maddox on the outside. You were getting absolutely ripped in the corner, in the slot with Roby Coleman. He was a disaster. Maddox was a disaster. I think the problems on the defensive side of the ball are a lot more scheme-oriented than talent. Last year, I would venture to say you had a complete lack of talent in the secondary last year. Your corners were just your 2 opposite corners of Slay were just completely inadequate. Maddox has done a great job, and it's like Dillard can't play right tackle. He's okay playing left tackle. Maddox can't play outside corner. He's good playing inside corner. 609-403-0973. Dom Corleone is watching the show on YouTube. What's up, Dom? The Birds are 100% going to lose to the Lions. Sirianni is clueless. He's never called plays, and it shows. His play calling is dictated by an analytics chart. Well, I'm not going to comment on whether they're going to win or lose to the Lions yet. Sirianni being clueless, sadly, I'm leaning in that direction. The whole he's never called plays before, that shouldn't factor in here. You know, all over football, at some time, at some point, a guy calls plays for his first time. You have to call plays for your first time. You don't have a history of calling plays without calling plays. Now, I'm sure Sirianni called plays in high school or college or something. So for people to say, well, he's never called plays and it shows, yeah, he looks like he is unprepared to call a game. But that shouldn't be the reason why he's unprepared. Like, the preparedness comes from being a coach, coaching under other guys, taking what they did. You know, I'm sure like Andy Reid never called plays. But when he got into the NFL or his first head coaching job, You weren't watching the Eagles like, man, this guy doesn't look like he's ever called plays before. Sirianni, though, looks like the guy who's never called play. That's the problem. Dom, like your comment there, the problem is Sirianni looks like a guy who's never called plays before. And that's the problem. It doesn't matter that you've never called plays before. I'm not holding it against somebody for not calling plays before. I'm holding it against you for looking like someone who's never called plays before. That's the problem. All right, 340. DeCecco football at 4. I hope you stick around for my Who's In, Who's Out, Week 7. Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Gill Show. Check out our website, 973ESPN.com. Sixers fans in South Jersey describe Ben Simmons in 4 words or less. Check out what South Jersey Sixers fans had to say about Ben. It's on our website right now at 973ESPN.com. Plus, Sixers Knicks tonight on 97.3 ESPN and over at 97.3 ESPN.com. Former Eagles tight end Zach Ertz made history on Sunday. He's going to Canton. He'll be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Why? Find out at 97.3 ESPN.com. 346 Sports Bash. It's a Tuesday night, Sixers 7:30, 97.3 ESPN. It's such a busy time. We got the World Series tonight. I don't know how many people around here are all that into the World Series. You got Astros, Braves. I like the whole Astros thing because I was never a big the Astros should be, you know what that came from? The fact that they beat the Yankees. If the Astros don't beat the Yankees, nobody makes a big deal out of it. But the fact that the Yankees lost to the Astros and everybody deemed, they were cheating, they were doing this, that, and the other thing. If they beat the Royals, nobody cares. It's the fact that they beat the Yankees. And all the Yankee fans are crying. The Astros are back in the World Series again. And I'm quite happy about it. So to all the Yankee fans out there that feel cheated by the fact that the Astros beat them because they cheated, the Astros are back there again. They're still better than you. So they figured out how to cheat better than you, and they beat you while they're not cheating. It's great. The Astros, I love it right now. Although the Braves are a team that I'm a little worried about if I'm the Phillies inside this NL East for years to come. They're young, right? This is a young Braves team. The one area where we talked about it last Thursday, their bullpen is just lights out. But this is Ann Anderson, 23 years old. Max Fried, 27 years old. Minter, 28 years old. Kyle Wright, 26 years old. Matzik out of the bullpen. He's 31. You got guys like that. Will Smith is 32. They got some young pitchers, but look at the team around. Now, Freeman's a free agent. That's going to be interesting. Riley, 24. Swanson, 27. Albies, 24. Obviously, Acuna is not on the team because of injury right now, but he's a young player. This team is just filled with young guys. I think this Braves team is going to be good for 3-4 more seasons after this. It should be entertaining. I joked on Twitter the other day, you got two National League teams in the World Series. I think they should scrap the DH for this World Series so that we can have even more fun with more high-pressure decision-making situations. That's what I want to see. I want to see more high-pressure decision-making situations that National League Baseball brings me. None of this DH BS. Make everybody a part of it. By the way, the lineup for tonight is out for the Astros. Altuve, Brantley, Bregman, Alvarez, Correa, Tucker, Juriel, McCormick, and Maldonado. Charlie Morton is pitching for the Braves tonight. We'll pick that game up in progress right here on 97.3 ESPN. Now I'm going to watch the Sixers, 7:30, and then I will probably – now I didn't look at the rest of the NBA. I have been heavy into the NBA again the start of the season. I'm watching Nuggets Suns the other night, Trail Blazers Suns. What do we got tonight? I watched Golden State Lakers opening night. What do we got tonight? We got Sixers Knicks. That's the TNT game. The other game is Denver Utah. Now probably Houston Dallas. Houston's kind of a stinker. Oklahoma City Golden State. Oklahoma City's fun. Golden State, Oklahoma City. LA, San Antonio. And it's a light card tonight, but Sixers, Knicks, 7:30. Then you got World Series. No football. Like those couple days where there's no football, that's where you're kind of like, all right, what can I fit in here, right? What can I fit in on the days where there's no football on? Well, the Sixers play. Damn it, right? It's like I want to try to fit a couple other things in that are non-sports related, but I'm just having a hard time. You got Monday Night Football last night. You watch that, and then tonight, bam, they give you Sixers and the World Series. Wednesday night, it's World Series, and I think the Flyers play a late game. They're out west, in Edmonton? Wednesday night? Yeah. Thursday, you got Sixers, Pistons Thursday, and then the rat race starts again. Football Thursday, college on Friday, Saturday, football. You got the Sixers and the Flyers on Friday, double dip. You got Sixers, Hawks, Flyers, Calgary, and then you get back to it. I've been trying to fit in something. All right, let me fit in some text messages while I got a chance here. Over on the free mobile app, Brandon is in Dillon Beach, California. Says, Mike, these past 5 games look like the worst play calling I can remember as an Eagles fan. Do you remember a worse stretch of play calling for the Birds? Even Chip's low point wasn't this bad. You know, Chip Kelly's offenses were very vanilla, but they were fun for a while until people figured them out. This guy has been figured out immediately. Chip, it took a year or so before teams finally kind of were like, all right, we got you. You're running like 5 plays. Chip Kelly's defense was horrible. Billy Davis was just in over his head. John Gannon is Billy Davis-esque. John Gannon is, what was the offensive line coach that was the defensive coordinator? What was his name? Totally blanking on that. Man, I should know that, right? You know who I'm talking about. He was the offensive line coach that Andy Reid made the defensive coordinator. What was his name? Juan Castillo. John Gannon is on that level. Juan Castillo bad. He's that bad right now. And if I had to say which guy's been worse, holy toss-up. As bad as Gannon has been, I actually think Sirianni as the play caller has been even worse. And I can't believe I'm even saying that. I really can't. That's how disappointed I am in Sirianni. Is that I think that Nick Sirianni, the play caller, has been worse than John Gannon, the defensive coordinator. How's that possible? John Gannon, the defensive coordinator, is horrible right now. Here's the difference. If John Gannon called a different game, played more man, I still don't think the defense is going to be a great defense. I don't think the offense is going to be a great offense. They should be way more consistent than what we're getting right now. That's my difference. This team just doesn't have good talent at linebackers. They're average at safety. They don't have a playmaker at defensive end. You look at the defensive leaders right now in the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles are in the middle of the pack. They're giving up 360 yards a game. It's probably smack dab in the middle. Where they are getting absolutely Rochambeau'd is they don't get stops. They give up 26 points a game. You know, Washington, who I think all of us thought would have one of the best defenses in football, they're giving up 30 points a game. It's the worst in the NFL. 30. The only teams in front of the Eagles, by the way, these are the teams behind the Eagles. It's Philadelphia, Detroit, Jacksonville, Kansas City, Houston, the Jets, Atlanta, Miami, and Washington. They're the worst defenses in football. So the Eagles have the 9th worst defense scoring in football. That being said, on offense, in terms of scoring points per game, they are averaging 22.7, which is middle of the road. And Nick Sirianni is the reason why. They should be better. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. It's Football at 4 with Andrew DeCecco coming up on the other side this hour, brought to you by Jersey Shore Federal Credit Union. Visit jerseyshorefcu.org for more. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast and it is brought to you locally by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long. Wild Wild West, Tropicana, Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. Andrew DeCecco is here. A lot of Eagles to kind of dissect, break down. The coordinators spoke today. Steichen, John Gannon, Sirianni yesterday. That was late. Sirianni spoke yesterday after 6 o'clock. He was supposed to go at 4:45. He then decided to push that back until 5:30. He didn't actually take the podium until almost 6 o'clock last night. The Eagles made a trade last night when we got off the air. Joe Flacco was traded to the Jets. So we'll get into all of the stuff surrounding Andrew at Eagles team at 2-5, which, man, it feels like this thing is starting to fall apart. It feels like all of the positive vibes from week number 1 have completely gone by the wayside. So I'll start with this. When you look at this team at 2-5, is this a talent issue or a coaching issue?
Said yesterday, Mike, that the defense does have a little bit of talent, especially on the back end. You have a lot of veteran players that have played a lot of football, and guys like Anthony Harris have played at a high level. He led the league in interceptions in 2019. Steve Nelson was the guy who was a competent player with the Steelers and the Kansas City Chiefs. And, of course, Darius Slay is back there as well. And Rodney McLeod is another player who I thought he's been the glue thus far since returning back to the lineup. But, I mean, and the defensive line, of course, has been revered, and they have yet to get a lot of pressure, and you wonder if that has to do with coaching. So I'm on the offensive side of the ball. I think if they have a strong offensive line, but a very talented but young group of wide receivers. So I do think that there is some talent there. So I'm leaning towards coaching as being one of the more primary concerns.
All right. Of the guys right now, Sirianni or Gannon, who has been more disappointing? I mean, both these guys, more Gannon than Sirianni. Sirianni was somewhat of an unknown. Gannon came in with the thought that this was a up-and-coming, smart defensive guy. I would imagine that he has been the more disappointing guy so far.
I have to agree that it has to be Jonathan Gannon because he has a little bit more to work with. There's not a lot of inexperience in that unit. Yeah, and he has yet to really scheme to the strengths of his players. Obviously, he doesn't have the required talent at the second level primarily to really be able to run the scheme that he envisioned doing. With that said, Mike, you have to do something to help the players that you have and put them in position to be successful because there are guys to work with there. I mean, Josh Sweat he's been misutilized. He's been pretty silent for much of the season. He's a guy that the Eagles have a lot of high hopes for. They've extended, and I mean, Fletcher Cox has been, by and large, a non-factor. Jalen Hargrave has been silent the past couple of weeks. I mean, I think that there has to be a way to get these guys going. They can't all be regressing all at the same time.
All right, with the talent they have, if they tweak the scheme, what scheme would be better for the talent that they have?
Well, I mean, I think you need to find a way to be a little bit more aggressive and attack a little bit more blitzing and putting more on the plate of the defensive backs that you have that aren't necessarily inexperienced. The communication should be pretty much, it should be pretty seamless at this point. And I think that you need to find a way to manufacture some sort of pressure if you're not getting home with your front four and not letting a quarterback just sit back there and pick apart the short to intermediate areas of the field, because Derek Carr is not the only quarterback that's done that with success. And the linebackers aren't going to get any better this season. But you have to find a way to at least alleviate some of the pressure on their responsibilities by bearing down on some of these quarterbacks and finding a way to get them rattled, because Derek Carr had all day back there to throw, and he didn't look like he was worried one bit about the defensive line or any sort of pressure.
Not at all. John Gannon is a guy who obviously was a secondary coach with the Indianapolis Colts, and you wonder, why does he not put I agree with you, Andrew. His two most talented guys are his two corners, Nelson and Slay. Now, they're not, Slay is good. He's not exceptional. He's good. Nelson's solid. He's not awful. These two guys are better than anything that this team has had for quite some time, right? These two guys, as you said, so John Gannon, as a guy who's been in the secondary, does he not realize that those are his best two options right now with the way his linebackers are?
Yeah, I mean, without question, those are the two most competent set of corners that the Eagles have had in years. And he's got to get away from putting. I mean, Jeff. I was talking to Jeff after the game, and he alluded to the Jonathan Gannon playing his safeties in Reno because they were so far back and out of the action. He's got to be more cognizant of the fact that teams are taking advantage of that and bring them down. Establish a physical element to your defense and play the run a little bit more effectively. If you're not, you can't keep the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, right? So you have to find a way to manufacture some sort of pressure to protect against the run because there's running lanes. I mean, you're making a guy like Kenyon Drake look like a world beater out there. I mean, that's just completely inexcusable. You're doing nothing to fill these holes. And I mean, I think that you have to put more pressure on those corners and bring another safety up there to help against the run when that teams are clearly planning to attack them in that way.
Yeah, I know that the linebackers are a big problem here, but you do have some talent at the defensive tackle position. What are you making of this kind of back and forth between Fletcher Cox and now Nick Sirianni? You know, I know Fletch is frustrated. We're all frustrated. I'm frustrated. He's frustrated. But what is the message that Fletcher is trying to get out? And then John Gannon today essentially came out and, Fletcher's saying a lot of things that we should probably look into.
Yeah, I mean, that's troubling because this is not the first time that Fletcher Cox has alluded to some of these deficiencies on defense and his unhappiness with how he's being utilized. I think they need to find a way to have him in more of an attack-based scheme and instead of a read and react passive game plan every week, because that's just not a recipe for success. I do think that that's a problem, though, Mike, when you're seeing some things like that slip out of the locker room or in a press conference in this situation. You worry about things starting to splinter a little bit because Jonathan Gannon has not shown a willingness to alter his approach. And I mean, if those last couple of resounding losses aren't going to send off the alarms if you're Jonathan Gannon, then what is it going to take to make those corrections?
Yeah, one of the quotes that was brought up today that you just mentioned about what is it going to take to make the corrections, and it's what the first question in John Gannon's press conference, which was, what's the accountability factor with Nick Sirianni? And Gannon says, we're just in constant communication of, hey, what do we want to do to try to win the game this week? Well, to me, that is not acknowledging that we need to get better in the game that we just lost. What do we need to get better and fix in the game we just lost? Forget about what we need to do to win the game this week. What do we need to fix? And that tells me they don't know how to win. They don't know how to figure out. They're worried about, what do we have to do this week to win? No. You got to figure out what you did when you lost. How you got to figure that out first.
Right, and they're answering it correctly, but what you have to go by the actions, not necessarily the words. And the actions are telling you that they don't have the answers to correct these issues, and it's going to persist. It's going to persist for the rest of the season, because I mean, in my opinion, because here we are entering Week 8, and the same issues that surfaced against the 49ers are still, they're still glaring, and that's, I mean. I don't know that they have an answer for it. And it cannot be saying that the personnel is a cop-out because, like we've mentioned, there are some talented players on that unit. And even still, it's your job as a defensive coordinator to put these guys in position and make plays.
100%. I mean, that to me is, hey, I have poor linebackers. I need to put a scheme together to hide those guys, not put a scheme together to exemplify those guys. And it seems that he's saying, hey, I got the two worst players on my team, and I'm going to put the most into their laps. Like, that to me is just malpractice the way they're doing that. And, hey, the proof is in the pudding. These teams are going up and down the field. The question I would have for you, Andrew, is, of the two guys, Gannon, Sirianni, who do you have more faith in as what you're seeing as, hey, they're struggling, he's struggling, but they'll figure it out?
I have more confidence that Jonathan Gannon will get it together because he seems to think that he sort of conveyed that he's willing to listen to some of his veteran players. I mean, you have guys like Anthony Harris and Javon Hargrave and Fletcher Cox and Rodney McLeod, who's a fantastic leader. You hope that they convey the message, hey, look, this is how you need to deploy us so that we can be successful and make plays for this football team. There's a lot of more veteran players there that I think that Jonathan Gannon will be receptive in listening to their input versus the offense. That there's a lot of youth and experience at the wide receiver position, and now you're down Miles Sanders, and not that he was really heavily involved with the game plan anyway, but I just think
early on he was.
Jonathan Gannon. What's that?
Miles Sanders early on was heavily involved.
Yeah, it only took 7 weeks to do so.
Right.
But my point is that there's a lot of youth and experience on offense, and a first-year head coach. Obviously, Jonathan Gannon's in his first year as a defensive coordinator as well. But yeah. I think he's more willing, more apt to lean on the veteran leaders on that team.
Yeah, and that, to me, that's a great point because I agree with you because what Sirianni is doing offensively is mind-boggling to me. I come in here Monday, and I can't believe how bad the game plans are, and we say it week in and week out. This team has young, skilled players. They have veteran offensive line. Their veteran player was Ertz, who's no longer here, but also Goddard. You threw the ball to Goddard. He had 3 catches, and he showed 23 yards a catch. That's your guy. Loosen things up with him and then allow the young players. It will help them get more separation, get more room to roam if they have to worry more about Goddard. But if they don't care if you're throwing the ball to Goddard because you never do, then it's just mind-blowing to me. I don't think Sirianni so far, other than the Atlanta game, Andrew, I thought he did a good job in that game. He can't figure out how to get Watkins the ball. He can't figure out what to do with Jalen Reagor. I mean, to me, he seems like he has no idea what to do with the talent that is on this roster.
And another thing that's very troubling is this offensive set of coaches that are on this team are very wide receiver-centric, including the head coach. So we've seen 2 penalties that wiped away touchdowns to receivers going out of bounds. We've seen the ineffectiveness of being able to scheme these guys open. And this is coming from guys who are well-versed in the wide receiver position, and they can't do it. I think sometimes he goes rogue. Well, not sometimes, often, weekly, you see times of him going rogue and getting away from things that are successful, such as involving Dallas Goedert early in the game. Like that worked against the Chiefs as well, but they went another direction. So he has not really shown me any consistency from a play calling standpoint for me to be comfortable or confident that he's going to be able to put the pieces together for this final stretch of the season.
Yeah, that's something I'm glad you brought up because it reminds me of they went under center, they turned around, they handed the ball off, and voila, Andrew, it worked. They went right down the field and scored. It set up play action. Like if I walked in, you said, Mike Gill, you are the head coach of this football team, or you're the offensive coordinator. This is your roster. Tell me what you think of it. And I'd say you got a play action team here. You got good tight end. You got a great offensive line. You got young wide receivers. This is a team that should be heavy play action, a lot of run. He's the exact opposite, except for when he did it, it worked. So why would he get away from it?
I think sometimes, at least I'm trying to put my head coaching hat on. I don't know if he's just guessing himself, if he's trying to outsmart himself, instead of just keep it simple. If the running game's working, Miles Sanders, for example, was averaging 6 yards a carry before he left the game injured. Rely on the running game. Don't get away from it. Dallas Goedert got open down the seam. The linebackers and the safeties, that was the area to exploit. That was working early on. Why do you deviate from that? And then all of a sudden, every week, Jalen Hurts is dropping back, rolling to his right. I should say escaping the pocket prematurely, rolling right. And defenses have caught on to that. But you keep keep reverting back to these same things that are costing you games instead of going with your bread and butter, which is proving to be, the blueprint of running the football to set up the pass and help your quarterback. They're getting away from that. And I think sometimes Nick Sirianni is, he's outsmarting himself, or he's just overthinking things.
When you listened to him yesterday, does it sound like a guy who has the answers? Does he sound like a guy who doesn't know what is the problem and doesn't know how to fix it? Do you feel like a guy who said, look, I'm young, I'm getting this, we're going in the right direction? Do you see a guy who's lost confidence?
He took full accountability, which you like to see from a head coach. you sort of look at the body language and the demeanor. I mean, if you're me, these are the things that I look at. And to me, you see a first-year head coach that has a lot of on his plate, almost overwhelmed at the way things have gone. Things are starting to spiral out of control. There's no veteran offensive mind there to really lean on as far as a coaching on the coaching staff. So who's going to be able to go to him and say, "Hey, coach, let's try this approach. Well, this is what's working out. Let me take a little bit off your plate, and let's try this for this upcoming week." I just think that there's no answers moving forward. I mean, and I think that he kind of is at a loss right now.
And then, as you wrote about over at InsideTheBirds.com, Andrew DeCheck goes with us here, Football at 4. It doesn't help when Gainwell fumbles. Now, there's two things here. One, after Sanders left, it seemed that they decided not to go back to the run, but Gainwell fumbling certainly didn't help making him feel good about wanting to go down that route. My question is, though, they're using Gainwell wrong. Why is he carrying the ball? That's not his role on this team.
Well, he's a running back, so he has to be able to do that. But, I mean, even still, how many times have you seen a running back fumble and the coach will go back to that player on the next possession to sort of instill confidence in them and get them rolling? He opted not to do that. Gainwell should be used as a pass receiving option. You know, first and foremost, that's his primary skill set. But you also have a guy in Boston Scott who has done this before. He's a guy, I like the way that Boston Scott runs the football. He's aggressive between the tackles, and he's not afraid to lower his shoulder and keep going despite his slight stature. He's a player that I think that you need to find a way to implement in the game plan until Miles Sanders is ready, because I think that you have to find a way to utilize both running backs and their skill sets. But you know, these are the problems, Mike, that when you're not, your margin for error is so minute when you're a team like this, like the Eagles, that are so young and have so many glaring deficiencies that a fumble, all of a sudden you're pressing, and now you're trying to open the second half with an onside kick. And you're giving a team who has moved the ball at will on you half the field to work with, and then Jalen Hurts fumbles. These things sort of spiral and tend to snowball for these type of teams. And, you know, this is just another classic example of these self-inflicted wounds.
You're right about that. And right now, you know, Sirianni said yesterday he's frustrated. I'm frustrated. We're all frustrated. He's right about that. But I think a lot of the frustration is coming from the way the team's being coached more than, hey, we're just getting our butts whipped because we're not. In years past, Andrew, I felt this team was outmanned. They had injury problems. They had, you know, just not enough talent because of age and injury that had kind of wrecked the offensive line, wrecked units, the secondary ravaged. You're outmanned. I don't feel that this team's outmanned. I think they're just out prepared. That to me is a huge problem.
Yeah, they're coming out. I mean, this week they came out and scored, but the defense is getting dominated in the trenches. I thought that the Raiders whooped the Eagles' offensive line as well. They just come out flat and unprepared, and that is a direct correlation to coaching.
Yeah.
And you're right. You're right there. There are enough playmakers on both sides of the ball for them to be better than what they've shown.
Andrew, they trade Joe Flacco yesterday. I mean, obviously, that's a win for them. They get the pick back that they traded for Minshew. Yesterday, I thought it was kind of interesting. Like, you know, Sirianni at the end, he's answering all these questions, and then he gets, hey, is Jalen Hurts your quarterback? I'm not suggesting there should be or will be a quarterback controversy, but I guess my question is, would you be intrigued to see what this offense looked like with Gardner Minshew, a guy who has won in this league?
I suppose, but, you know, you sort of know what Gardner Minshew is at this point. And obviously moving Joe Flacco out bumps him up to number 2, and you sort of wonder if Jalen Hurts is a bad half, against the Lions for seeing Gardner Minshew in that offense. But in the same vein, do you have any confidence in Nick Sirianni to work with Gardner Minshew's skill set and cater to his strengths? He has not proven to be able to do that with Jalen Hurts. And this whole season was essentially a punt anyway. It's all about evaluating. So I think that Jalen Hurts deserves a full season to see what he can do, what he can't do. And, Gardner Minshew is going to be around. He's going to always be in the conversation, but I think that we got to give Jalen the full season to see what he can do.
All right, Andrew DeCecco, and check out his piece over at InsideTheBirds.com about when he thought the floodgates opened in this particular game as the Eagles lose in Vegas. They'll play Detroit, and obviously we'll talk more about the matchups for Detroit and what would happen if you lose to an 0-7 team. What would that say about the state of this franchise? That's coming up on Thursday's edition of Football at 4 with Andrew DeCecco right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Andrew, frustrating loss again. Well done on the breakdown.
Thanks, man. Talk to you Thursday.
Yeah, he's spot on a lot of things, especially the John Gannon stuff. I mean, Jonathan Gannon, to me, has to do a much better job. He is essentially saying, our linebackers are the worst part of our team, and I'm going to put the most in their plate. John Gannon today, he was asked a lot back and forth on the Fletcher Cox stuff. Tim McManus from ESPN said, speaking publicly, Fletcher Cox suggested pretty strongly that he doesn't agree with the way he's being deployed. How does that mess with your general philosophy that you shared with us? Your whole philosophy is making sure that you're bending the scheme towards the strength of the players. Gannon says he's got good points. I need to do a better job with him. Oh, here we go. Better job. Got to do a better job. You know, the Andy Reid line. John Gannon, it better change this week or your defense is going to get wiped up by an 0-7 Lions team. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Nick Sirianni, you're not absolved from this either. Hey, when we come back, it's the Fine Five. It's Tuesday. That means it's who's in, who's out. My 7-14, Woo. My 14 NFL playoff teams after 7 weeks. Who's in, who's out. The NFL playoffs. That's coming up next here on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Who's in, who's out? Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. These are my 14 NFL playoff teams after watching 7 weeks of all the action. These are the 7 teams in each side that I think will make the NFL playoffs. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. You are locked into a Tuesday edition here on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. If you're listening on the app, you can hit us up through the free mobile app. And, of course, you can message us on the phone. You can message us through the text board, 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. That's how you can get involved today as well. And, of course, if you're watching the show live on our live video stream over at 97.3 ESPN on YouTube. All right, who's in, who's out? These are the AFC playoff teams that I think I see. A little more challenging this week. Bills in the East, 4-2, coming off a loss on Tennessee Thursday night. Still think the Bills are fine. Only 98 points they've given up this year. They've given up the least amount of points. They're the only team in football that's given up less than 100. Of course, they had 1 week off, but still, there are other teams that had bye weeks, and Buffalo's still the only one that's given up less than 100. So Buffalo in the East, I liked what I saw from New England, but it's hard to judge against the Jets. You know, the AFC East has a team at 1-5 and another one at 1-6. Buffalo in the East. In the North, this is tough. I'm going to go Baltimore. I know Cincinnati just beat them at home, 41-17. I need to see more Cincinnati. I like Cincinnati's defense. I need to see a little more. I know. I want to say Cincinnati. They might show up somewhere down the line here, wink, wink. They look good offensively, too. 41 points they put up. But their defense, 17 points they gave up to Baltimore. South, I'm going Tennessee, although that one's got interesting all of a sudden. Indianapolis got themselves back in it. Oh, wait, Jacksonville and Houston are combined 1-11 in that division. That division is just as bad as the East. Terrible. And in the West, I'm going Chargers. This one's tough. The wild cards in the West. I'm going Cincinnati. I'm putting them in. I'm going Kansas City. I'm going to stick with Kansas City. I know their defense is really bad. And they look terrible on Sunday against Tennessee. Awful. But I'm going to go Kansas City and Indianapolis. I like what I saw from Indianapolis the other night. We thought this team was really good. They got off to a bad start. They had a lot of injury problems. They're starting to get healthy, and they're starting to look good. So I'm going Indianapolis over Vegas. Vegas would be my next team out, and Cleveland. Too many problems with Cleveland right now. Don't like the quarterback. That's who's in the AFC. So in Bills, Baltimore, Tennessee, Chargers, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Indy, out. New England, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Vegas, Denver. They're out. All right, who's in NFC? Dallas, in. Going away. Dallas is 5-1. The rest of the division is all 2-5. Horrible. Washington's atrocious defensively. I don't know what happened there. They've given up 210 points. It's the most in the NFL. The only team close right now is the Dolphins. Washington's the worst. Packers in the north. Tampa in the south. Arizona in the west. The Rams are a wild card. And now it's when it gets tough. I'm going to go New Orleans. They're 4-2. I'm going to go New Orleans, and this is why. I saw the game last night, and if I watched that game, I'd say that's not a playoff team. I'll tell you why. Dennis Allen's defense is going to keep them in the games. Dennis Allen's defense will keep them in the games. They're just going to play it close to the vest, Kamara, they'll get Thomas back maybe. I'm going to go Saints, but I don't feel great about it. I can promise you that. The other team, this is tough, man. Minnesota's won 2 in a row. Chicago's lost 2 in a row. Atlanta's won 2 in a row. Carolina's lost 4 in a row. San Francisco's lost 4 straight. Seattle's a mess. Washington's lost 3 in a row. Philadelphia's lost 2 in a row. The Giants won. Of that group, somebody's got to get in. Right now, it's 3-3 Minnesota. So I'm going to go Minnesota. I would venture to say, as you know, Philadelphia has the easiest schedule left of all those teams, for whatever that's worth. But I'm going to go Minnesota in. So in Dallas, Green Bay, Tampa, Arizona, Rams, Saints, Seahawks. In. Out would be Washington, Philly, Giants, Chicago, Detroit, Atlanta, Carolina, San Fran, and Seattle. We thought that NFC West was going to be one of the best divisions ever. San Francisco banged up. Seattle loses Wilson. The South, Atlanta, oh my gosh, I can't believe Atlanta's 3-3. Kyle Pitts, by the way, he's pretty good. Remember all the Kyle Pitts talk? Yeah, he's pretty good. So that's who I got in the NFC. Dallas, Packers, Tampa, Arizona, Rams, Saints, Minnesota. It's close, though. Let me check out New Orleans' schedule coming up here. See, New Orleans, brutal. They got Tampa, the Titans, the Bills, the Cowboys, Tampa again. I mean, they got 5 really difficult games coming up. I could see them being like 9-8. It's a problem I have with them. They got a lot of tough games. I mean, they still got a brutal schedule. Minnesota is 3-3. Minnesota plays Dallas, at Baltimore, at the Chargers, at versus Green Bay, Rams, at Green Bay. I mean, that Minnesota schedule's brutal. I don't know that they get in with that schedule. I mean, and then I'm reading off Philadelphia's schedule. Washington, Giants, Jets, Detroit. You know, 8-Ball says Atlanta. All right, let me check Atlanta's schedule here. See what the Atlanta schedule looks like here. See if I can agree with you there, 8-Ball. Carolina, okay. Saints on the road, Cowboys on the road. I don't like them against Dallas. New England, Buccaneers, Bills on the road, Saints. Okay, Atlanta. You could sell me on Atlanta. 3-3 Atlanta. Like, if you're talking about Philly because they have an easy schedule, and nobody's talking about Philly because they have an easy schedule, I'm just saying, Atlanta, you would say they have an easy schedule. Or of the teams I just mentioned, New Orleans and Minnesota's schedule is way more difficult than Atlanta. Who else is in the mix? Chicago? Chicago's got San Fran, Pittsburgh, Ravens, Lions, Cardinals, Packers, Vikings, Seahawks. Their schedule's not all that difficult, but Chicago's a disaster. That team's a mess. Who do you guys think? Because that NFC wild card, the 2 wild card spots are going to be up for grabs, definitively up for grabs. I'm interested to see how everybody's thinking out there. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Yeah, because when I give you the schedules, man, Minnesota and New Orleans schedules are brutal. Who else? Do another one real fast. Carolina's 3-4. What the hell happened to them? They've got the Falcons, the Patriots, the Cardinals. They ain't beating the Cardinals. Washington, Dolphins, Falcons, at Bills, Buccaneers, at Saints, at Buccaneers. All right, I see them losing 6 more games. That's a 10-loss team, Carolina. Carolina's a 10-loss team. Minimally 10. You're going to get a 10-loss playoff team? Possible. Let's see Philadelphia's schedule next to those teams. Detroit, Denver, Saints, Giants, Jets, Washington, Giants, Washington, Cowboys. Whew. Man, there's some bad teams in there. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9. I mean, the last stretch of games for the Eagles, those teams are combined what? 9 and you got the Jets who have 5 losses, 10, 15, and they play those teams what? Twice. 25. 9 and 25 those teams are combined. Shoo. Should be interesting, my friends. Should be interesting. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. It's free mobile app. Tito and EHT. Eagles get in, Patriots get in. All right, Tito, I like the positive vibes. Hey, I have said all along, I wouldn't be shocked if the Eagles got in. I'm not suggesting they will. I wouldn't be shocked if they would, though, just because they're scheduled. Now, right now, the coaches are getting in the way. That's the problem. Coaches are getting in the way. Get out of the way. You got a team that can get in this year. I know a lot of people out there screaming, saying, they're not getting in. We want draft picks. If they get draft picks, then you're going to bitch and moan that the guy drafting isn't good enough. Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill, at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. Don't tell me you're not complaining about the guy making the pick, so you might as well just get in the playoffs. Back with more Sports Bash on the way here on the 97.3 ESPN. Hopefully you're enjoying the Tuesday. Baseball tonight, you got World Series game number 1. And you can hear it only live on 97.3 ESPN. Right after the Sixers and the Knicks. We'll have that for you first here on 97.3 ESPN. Sixers Knicks tonight. Real quick. So you might have heard yesterday the Sixers have ceased in finding Ben Simmons. Check out right now at 97.3ESPN.com what South Jersey Sixer fans are saying about Ben Simmons. We asked you to describe Ben Simmons in 4 words or less. Check out what South Jersey Sixer fans are saying right now over at 97.3ESPN.com. All right. What was I looking at here in the break? By the way, Kamara last night had a pretty big game, right? He had 10 catches for 128 yards and a touchdown. Kamara, I'm not saying that kind of matter. All that much. But they threw the ball to him 11 times last night. And he had 118 yards after the catch last night. I love the way that they accentuate the positives of the players that they have under the constrictions or restrictions of their offense. They don't love Jameis Winston throwing the ball. He makes a lot of mistakes. Don't make him throw the ball all that much. He had 20 carries for 50 yards. But I love the 10 catches out of the backfield. See, I'm not asking you to run the ball. No, but I got a weapon. Miles Sanders was a weapon. Now he's hurt. Jameis Winston averaged 3.6 yards per completion. Are you kidding me? He was 4 of 17 when he threw the ball to receivers last night. 4 of 17, and they won the game. You know, the Saints defense, though, I talked about Dennis Allen and why I have the Saints as one of my teams in. They blitzed on 60% of Geno Smith's dropbacks last night. He had an extra man in his face. 60% of the dropbacks. It's pretty unbelievable when you think about it. He got sacked 3 times when he got blitzed in the game. Now, it's different when you're facing Geno Smith than it is Pat Mahomes and Tom Brady. I get that. But that's what you have coming up. These are the quarterbacks the Eagles defense will face the rest of the way, my friends. Starting this Sunday, Jared Goff, Herbert. Now, Herbert can get you. Goff, I'll take my chances. Teddy Bridgewater, Jameis Winston, Daniel Jones, maybe Joe Flacco. Tyler Heineke, Daniel Jones, Tyler Heineke, and Dak Prescott. The only name on that list is Dak Prescott. If he doesn't send pressure at these clowns that I just named off, malpractice. If he doesn't send pressure at the quarterbacks I just named, gotta go. Sorry. If you can't see that those quarterbacks aren't equipped to beat you, you're not qualified. Not qualified. Period, point blank. Everybody listening, you know it, I know it. John Gannon, get your bleep together, dude. Those quarterbacks that I just mentioned, other than Herbert and other than Dak Prescott, you shouldn't be scared of any of them. Send the house. Send the Ocean Casino. Follow up with the Hard Rock. Just start throwing things at these quarterbacks. They're going to make mistakes. The guys I mentioned, much like Sam Darnold, they'll make mistakes. They got mistakes written all over them. All right. I want to get into World Series real fast. It begins tonight. Braves have won. Last time they were in the World Series, 1999. They have the fewest games won in the whole field, 88 games. They haven't won the World Series since 1995. The Astros, 3rd time in the last 5 years. All right? Now, both of these teams have different paths to get to the World Series. Atlanta was 10-1 to win it all. We talked about it with Luke during our conversation about prop swap. If you got on Atlanta, they were under 500 at one point. They entered the year at 10-1. A long shot. The Braves at midseason were 50-1 to win the World Series. So both of these teams have had their issues, but the Braves, who did not get over 500 until August the 6th, here they go. 44-45 they were at the All-Star break. And they lost their best player in Ronald Acuna. And at the time Acuna went out, he was one of 3 players in Major League Baseball that led his team in average, home runs, and stolen bases. And at the trade deadline, when they made all those moves, they were 50-1 shots. They got aggressive and made moves, and Dave Dombrowski sat on his hands. Now, I'm not being critical of Dombrowski because I don't think he had a lot to trade, but the Braves didn't give up a whole heck of a lot to tweak that outfield. And you wonder if it was Dombrowski who made some of those moves and tweaked his outfield, would we be having a different conversation here? Probably not, because the Braves bullpen's really good. I just ask. Now, I like the Braves in this series for a couple of reasons. Their bullpen's at the top of the list. Both sides in this series, right? Both sides in this series have some, the pitching for the Braves bullpen, very good. They have some better starting pitching. McCullers is out for Houston. I think that's going to be something that, really, how many bullpen games is Houston going to go with here? I hate the bullpen game at a magnitude of this, a game of this magnitude. But their offense is really good. They led the majors in scoring during the regular season. They got 5 runs a game. They're up to 6 runs a game in the postseason. So keep that in mind. You got offense from the Astros. They're on pace to be the 5th team in the wild card era since 1995 to lead the majors in scoring in the regular season and the playoffs. And all of those 4 teams won the World Series. All of them. This is a situational hitting team. They're hitting 360 with runners in scoring position. I think it's going to be a fun World Series. But I kind of like the Braves, sadly. Man. I kind of like the Braves a little bit in this series. I watched a lot of that Braves-Dodgers series. I got to say, I watched more Braves-Dodgers than I did Astros-Red Sox. And I think the Braves, look, the Astros beat the Red Sox. Not as good as the Dodgers. The Dodgers were clearly the best team that were left in the field, and maybe the best team in all of baseball. They're the defending champions. And the Braves handled them with ease, man. They handled them with ease. I mean, that series should have been a sweep, realistically. So I'll go Braves over Astros in the World Series. Give me Braves over Astros in the World Series. Currently, the Astros are minus 150. The Braves are a plus 130 underdog. And if the Astros price stays at 154 below, this is the closest World Series since 2015 when the Royals beat the Mets. That was a pretty even one. Both of those teams were minus. Royals minus 104, minus 116 for the Mets. So you can get the Braves right now at a decent price, plus 130 the Braves are. All right, no PT today. He's got the day off. Everybody's taking off on me today. PT's off. Josh is off. I'm not off. I'm Mike Gill. I'm here for you. It's football season. I don't take a day off during football season. I'm here with you on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. All right, 5 o'clock hour, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Mike Gill with you till 6. Josh has got game night up next. He is down in Florida. He'll be doing it live from the PFL Championships in Miami Beach. What's today? Tuesday? No football tonight. World Series, Sixers and the Knicks. 97.3 ESPN's coverage at 7:30 right here on 97.3 ESPN. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973 on your drive home. If you want to connect with the show, you can text me there through the mobile app as well. DM me there. You can hit me up on the video stream. A lot of comments today on the video stream that I want to get to today. 8-Ball checks in. With the trade of Flacco, do you think the Eagles will trade for Watson and Hurts becomes the backup? I have convinced myself about a week ago that they were going to get Watson. There was a report over the weekend that said that he is off the radar. Is he off the radar because Watson said he doesn't want to play here? Because I think Howie Roseman will continue to call until they have the best offer. The Eagles have the best offer, period, point blank. Their offer is better than Miami. Carolina's in the mix. Their offer is not better than Philadelphia's. Philadelphia has the best offer. If they want Deshaun Watson, they can get Deshaun Watson. The question is, after 7 games, do they have an evaluation of the current quarterback, Jalen Hurts? That's what it comes down to. What do they think about Jalen Hurts? And I don't know the answer to that question. You know why? Because I don't think they know about the damn coach right now. 609-403-0973. Jake Koch is watching the show. Lori better clean house after this season. Only one safe is Stoutland. Well, if it goes the way that it continues to go, Jay, yes, I think clearing house could be a possibility. If they continue to lose in the manner that they're losing, uninspired defensive effort, offense disconjointed. I look at this schedule coming up, and I just can't see them continuing to play. They've played Buccaneers, they played Dallas, they played Kansas City. I know Kansas City's struggling. Kansas City's just better than you are. This Oakland game, Vegas game, this is a game that has me scratching my head a little bit. They're supposed to be taking steps against against the mediocre teams. They've been competitive with the mediocre teams all season so far. They weren't competitive with that team. Mike, the real question, do we still have Jordan Howard? Yes, they still have Jordan Howard. You'll probably see him this weekend. Dom Corleone. We knew the schedule was tough. It's not the record as much as it's the way they've lost. Totally agree with that, by the way. Completely uncompetitive, getting steamrolled by average teams. The average teams part I disagree with, Dom. Now, they got steamrolled by the Raiders, who I think is an average team. I think the Raiders are a good, not great team. Tampa Bay's not average, dude. Dallas is not average. Kansas City right now, you can make an argument. Kansas City, I don't know what to think of. Their defense stinks. It's not an average offense, though. I mean, Kelsey was banged up this week. The fact that you're saying they're getting steamrolled by average teams, they didn't get steamrolled by Carolina, they beat them. They didn't get steamrolled by Atlanta, they beat them. And they didn't get steamrolled by San Francisco. The game was, 17-11, something like that? They didn't get steamrolled by those teams. They were in those games. They got steamrolled by the teams that are good. They didn't get steamrolled by the average teams, Dom, so I don't agree with that. George Lewis checks in. Mike, bend but don't break only works if you don't break. They break every time after bending. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The whole bend but don't break defense, it's predicated on the linebackers tackling, for God's sakes. Keep it in front, tackle. Keep it in front, tackle. Keep it in front, tackle. Tackle, tackle, tackle. It's the main point of playing defense. They can't tackle. Oh. They're going to drive me to drink, this defense. I'm not blitz. I'm never that guy. I don't care if you blitz, because I know if you blitz, you're going to get blitzed. They can't blitz against some of these quarterbacks. I get it. Against the quarterbacks coming up, they need to apply pressure. I said it in Carolina. Go back to those shows. Darnold, pressure him. He'll turn the ball over. 3 picks. Jonathan L. checks in. He says, it's going to be fine. Just relax. Our team sucks. Evaluate at the end. If we finish with a top 5 pick next year, it was a good season. Well, they're going to get a top 5 pick from Miami. Miami's pick's going to be in the top 5. Miami stinks. So don't get Miami's pick in the top 5. So you're getting Miami. And by the way, like, I know everybody hates Roseman. 98% of the listeners hate Roseman. I understand that. But can we all say Roseman did a good job in getting the pick from Miami? He got them to give him a first-round pick unprotected. And it's going to be, right now, for God's sakes, in the standings of the league right now, Miami's the second worst team in football. If the draft was tomorrow, the Eagles would have the second pick because Miami is that bad. So that's a trade that is just an absolute win for Howie Roseman. I don't care how much you hate Howie Roseman. That is a win and a half for Howie Roseman. To get that pick, then the Eagles, if they continue to play poorly, as Jonathan L. suggests, they would then have their pick, which is going to be a top 10 pick, you would imagine, if they continue to lose, and then the Indianapolis pick. They ain't benching Carson Wentz. They're going to get that first-round pick unless something goes completely bonkers down there. It looked a little wonky remember when he got hurt? They're going to have 3 picks in the first round. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. A couple other messages. These are all on the video side of things, by the way, for everybody watching on the video. Mike, have you seen enough from Jalen? At this point, he's unable to run the most basic college offense. Should we actively be looking for a new guy in the draft, the kid from Ole Miss? Now, I am not a fan of any of the quarterbacks in this draft. I'll say that. Okay, let's start with that. I am not a fan of any of the quarterbacks in this draft class. So that's number one. The only quarterback, and look, if you get the number 1 overall pick, I don't think there's a question here. Now, you're talking about Matt Corral, and he has improved this year. He has all the traits that people, he's a big arm. He's a downfield accurate passer. He has the ability to kind of get and move out of the pocket. He would be the guy that right now I think is most people's number 1 overall pick. The Eagles don't have the number 1 pick. Currently, they would have the number 2 pick, and I'm okay with that. Let the Lions go take Matt Corral. You can go get the kid Thibodeau. He is exactly what this team needs. He's the best player in the draft, and they need an explosive first-step pass rusher. Myles Garrett type of player. That's what this kid is, Thibodeau. If they can get that Miami pick, and they are that bad, and you can get in the top 2, that's the guy they need. I don't want to see Sam Howell. The other guy that is a possibility, and they need, is Kyle Hamilton, the safety. I can't believe we're talking about the draft already. I don't want to go down that road, but I like Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame. He makes all the plays in the secondary. He hits. He is exactly what this team needs defensively. They need both of those guys. If you walked out with Thibodeau and Hamilton, that's a great day at the office. The other quarterback is the kid Malik Willis from Liberty. I mean, he is just such a unknown, erratic decision maker. Big upside kid, but you can't draft for big upside. Like, just see if Jalen Hurts can grow. And go and get the guys around him. Go and get the guys, Thibodeau, Hamilton, build up that defense. If this defense was half decent, this team's probably 500 right now. That's the problem. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. All right, more of the messages on the video. Good questions so far, by the way, coming in throughout the day. Let's see. Derek says, Gannon sucks. This defense is so predictable. They form up and just stand there. They make this was from earlier in the day. Sorry. It got filtered back through. They make average quarterbacks Hall of Famers. That's not accurate, though. I got to bring that back up. The average quarterbacks have been average. It's the good quarterbacks who have crushed them. That's the problem. The good quarterbacks the great quarterbacks look elite. The elite quarterbacks look like, Tom Brady. All right, what else we got? 609-403-0973. All right, here we go. Scott from Cape May. Scott, let's see what you got here. Mike, it's not about the picks. It's not about the GM. It's about the culture. It's about the fan base. Look at the results. Carson Wentz now doing well. If I were Ben Simmons, I would get out of there, hold your ground. Everyone that leaves does well. Look at Zach Ertz. Should be a slap in the face. Well, Scott and Cape May, you're not wrong. I brought this up earlier. Like, everybody wanted Wentz gone. He's gone, and now he's fine. You're not off base. The culture, the fan base. I will say this, though. As much as the culture and the fan base you're talking about, this franchise has done nothing but win. Other than Super Bowls. I get it. It's all about winning Super Bowls. But there's a lot of teams. Dallas, New York, Washington. Now, New York won 2 Super Bowls in like a 20-year span here. The last 5 years, they've been the worst team in the NFL. I get it. They won 2 Super Bowls. Tremendous achievement. But over 20 years, they've been terrible. Eagles won 1, they won 2. Okay, they won 1 extra Super Bowl. But for 20 years, the Eagles were way closer to winning a Super Bowl than Washington, Dallas, and New York. We act like this team has been a laughing stock. It's just not accurate. I know it's frustrating. It's very, very, very frustrating where they are currently. But we're acting like they're here in this position all the time. And that's just not accurate. They have this, like, what happened, in my opinion, is they won the Super Bowl and then tried to stick with that group of players, and it backfired on them. It backfired on them big time. This quarterback class coming in, a lot of people think this is one of the worst quarterback classes, period. So I tweeted out this morning, follow me on Twitter, at Mike Gill Show, and my thoughts were this, okay? The Eagles could have 3 top 15 picks. Don't take a quarterback just to take one. Okay? Don't take a quarterback just to take one. So many teams just take a quarterback because they feel like they need one. Don't take a quarterback just to take one. If you don't know if you have an answer on Hurts, fix the other areas. Let Hurts play. Minshew's here. Play with those guys and build up around them, and then figure out the quarterback situation via trade. Russell Wilson, via trade. Somebody else. Derek Carr. I don't care. Don't take a quarterback just to take one. Number 2, as I just hinted at, it's possible to trade for a quarterback. Russell Wilson. Every year, somebody wants out. Somebody wants to get moved. That's where Howie Roseman comes into play. Identify those players and try to put together a package. This team's going to be in much better cap situation after this year. It was a kind of a 1-year speed bump on the cap situation. They're going to be out of the cap hell next season. They should be players again next year. Number 3, focus on the best defensive players available. You don't have one non-replaceable defensive player. Not one. And the kid Thibodeau, he would play and be your best defensive player right off the bat. He would change the entire complexion of your defense, much like Parsons does for Dallas. He would be opposite of, he would basically replace Derek Barnett. He would be him and Sweat. If Graham comes back, Hamilton at safety, he steps in. You got 2 players that quickly could look at what Dallas has done with their defense that fast. 609-403-0973. Mike, Eagles should take best player available with first 2 picks and try to get a king's ransom for the 2023 draft for last pick, where quarterbacks might be highly regarded. Well, they have 3 picks in this draft. The quarterback position in this draft is not very good. I don't know where the 2023 quarterback class will be. Somebody messaged on the video stream, Thomas, what do you think of Carson Strong? He's okay. He's a lot of people probably don't even know who that is. He's the quarterback at Nevada. He's a kind of a Ben Roethlisberger kind of guy. When you watch him, he is a big player. He kind of, he reminds me of Roethlisberger, right? Doesn't he remind, if you watch Carson Strong out there, doesn't he remind you kind of Roethlisberger? A lot of physical tools, played at Nevada. He's tall, big physical looking kid, big arm, but I think he's a little, he'll throw the ball down the field. I'll tell you that much. I just think he's a little erratic for me. I don't know. I'm not taking him in the first round. I don't think he's a first round guy, but definitely he would be an interesting prospect more than, hey, I got to take this guy with pick 1, 2, 10. That's the issue. You're picking that high. You can't just take a guy. You just can't take a guy just to take a guy. Too many times teams do that. Washington, let's just take Dwayne Haskins. You don't have to do that with this class. 2013, look at Geno Smith last night. People were going to take him number 1 overall at one point. Why? Just because he was the best quarterback there was. E.J. Manuel. Matt Barkley. That class stunk. This class here, terrible. You got the kid from Liberty. The kid from Pitt actually has played pretty well. Who was the guy? Man, I'm blanking on the kid from Fresno State. I can't remember. Nadu brought him up earlier. But these are guys that are like day 3 guys. This is not a good quarterback class. Rattler was supposed to be good. He stinks. Howell is having a down year. The kid from Ole Miss is the one at the top right now. 609-403-0973. Sorry. Got a lot of text messages just came in all at one time. Mike, take it from a Jets fan who hasn't seen the playoffs since Sanchez. Y'all don't have to have it so bad. Patience, young grasshoppers. Nah, I look, as an Eagles fan, I don't think we have it so bad. People just want results right now. They just want results immediately all the time. It's irrational. But fans are allowed to be irrational. This, by the way, it's a town that's only won 1 championship in football, 2 in baseball, haven't been in the playoffs in baseball in 10 years, longest streak in baseball other than Seattle. Basketball since 1983. So I get it. Mike, one of the biggest disappointments with the Eagles is the defensive line. They have not been impactful. Josh Sweat was all hyped up all preseason. He's done nothing. Barnett, total waste of a first-round pick. Fletcher Cox just doesn't have the motor he used to have. I would agree that the defensive line, I talked about this Monday, which was, to me, the defensive line was supposed to be the bigger advantage in this game against the Raiders because the Raiders' offensive line is very weak. Your defensive line is supposed to be very good. They didn't have it. They didn't have it. Now, Fletcher Cox indicated, though, see, this is where the scheme and the system come into play. Fletcher Cox is throwing up his hands, and he's ticked off because of the way he's being asked to be used. He said, for all these years, I've been this aggressive player, and now they're basically telling me not to be aggressive. You know, like, hey, we don't want you getting upfield and rushing the quarterback. We want you to kind of take blockers on because they want him to kind of help with the run game. I mean, Fletcher Cox has not had a really solid year. I think a lot of it, though, is more to do with the system than it is Fletcher Cox, to be honest with you. I'm kind of looking at Fletcher Cox and listening to what he's saying and hearing the frustration. And then Josh Sweat. You're right about Sweat. We heard so much about. One of the issues with Sweat is he's been productive. Josh Sweat has a sack and a half. He's got 3 tackles behind the line of scrimmage. He's got, 22 tackles. The problem was they don't play him enough. Even with the injury to Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat's just not on the field enough. Now, he hasn't made a huge impact sacking the quarterback multiple times. You know, Hargrave has 6 sacks. Other than Hargrave, 6. Nobody else has double digits, more than a sack and a half. Josh Sweat is next with 1.5 sacks. So 6 for Hargrave. After that, 1.5. Josh Sweat is the most. That's a problem. 609-403-0973. Mike agreed. Keep the picks. Sign Aaron Rodgers. That's not going to happen. Paul in Pleasantville. Appreciate you chiming in. Mike, going back to the culture comment, the Eagles have always been in the mix every year for as long as I've been alive. Besides that, 1 year under Rich Kotite and maybe the final year under Andy Reid, they've always been relative, which is why this season is so infuriating. We are used to seeing the Eagles always fighting. This is like watching a really long preseason now. Yeah, it is. You're right about that. But you're also right about at some point you can't compete all the time. The Patriots, 20 years of success. Now, they won 6 Super Bowls, but it just all of a sudden, now they're 3-4. Last year, they didn't make the playoffs. You can't just keep thinking you're always going to be good. You have to retool it, rebuild it, redo something at some point. Rob Monty from the Associated Press. We'll talk more about the culture of the Philadelphia Eagles, where the culture stands. Mike, I couldn't agree more. I can't stand when teams reach on a quarterback in the first round. Personally, I don't think quarterback should even be a first-round pick unless it's a clear-cut stud. It's a team game. You need a strong defense, elite special offensive players. Mike from Ocean City. I don't like taking a quarterback just because your team isn't good at that position, so you feel like you have to have one. We don't have a quarterback, let's take Dwayne Haskins. We don't have a quarterback, let's take Zach Wilson. We don't have a quarterback, let's take Trey Lance. You take these bad quarterbacks or quarterbacks that aren't ready, and they don't help your team. They just set you back. Mike Pickett from Pittsburgh, highest-ranked quarterback, putrid class. Yeah, I don't like this quarterback class a lick. Joey D, Mike, tough sell, but you think Seattle has run its course for Russell Wilson? Eagles put him on the roster with Seahawks rebuilding. Yep, I think that's a possibility. I think the Wilson-Seattle marriage could be coming to a close. All right, thanks for all the text messages. I'll get back to them. 609-403-0973. Keep them coming. And when we come back, Rob Monty's in the house. We will talk about the culture of the Philadelphia Eagles, and I want to get his thoughts on, is this a talent issue or a coaching issue? Bigger challenge for this franchise moving forward. And are we really possibly seeing a one-and-done coach? Is that a possibility? We'll discuss coming up with Rob Monty from the Associated Press. Coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. All right. It is a Tuesday. Sixers and Knicks tonight. World Series Game 1. Rob Motti's here from the Associated Press. And I know Rob was, had to wait for a while yesterday before Nick Sirianni finally appeared. He was scheduled at 4:45, then 5:30. He came out around 6. And I don't know what the delay was, but he seemed to be a bit rattled when he came out yesterday. Didn't seem like a upbeat kind of day. So do you anticipate that he got a nice conversation with the powers that be?
I think part of the lateness too might have been the Joe Flacco trade that sent him back to the Jets, and they had to make sure all that was dotted and signed and everything else. But yeah, Mike, I think he had some conversations yesterday, and I think he's having some conversations today, and things don't look good there. And that's an understatement, right? It's a bad football team. And at this point, I don't know how they get better, because you got so many issues top to bottom. And you asked a couple questions right as you were heading into the break that are very interesting, because is this a talent issue? Is it a coaching issue? I would start with the talent, because we saw this team play poorly last year, and they had a lot of players who are still here, and there's a different coaching staff. So you got to look at the top, and you got to look at where is the talent coming from. And I think that's been the problem with the Philadelphia Eagles. It wasn't Carson Wentz. It wasn't Doug Peterson. The problem with the Eagles all along has been those who procure the talent, and that starts with the GM.
Well, obviously, when I look around this team, where are places, Rob, that they are deficient? Like, you're like, this guy stinks, he can't play. This guy stinks, he can't play. Like, when I look at the talent, I'm not saying they have a Super Bowl roster, but they seem to me unprepared, weakly unprepared. Like, the only two guys you can say, Slay, he could play. Nelson, he's a professional. He's not, they're better at the secondary than they've been the last 5 years, right? So the only guys on the whole roster that I look at and say, these guys just can't play is linebacker. Now, I might not say these guys are Pro Bowlers, but should they look the way they did on Sunday?
No, they shouldn't look the way they did on Sunday. And I can't believe why the offensive scheme, for one, let's start there, because of an injury to Moss, that you come out finally under center running the football and have success and score a touchdown. And boy, didn't things look promising right there. Everybody's been talking about running the ball, establishing the run, helping your quarterback, your young, inexperienced quarterback, as he continues to take reps and learn in the NFL by being under center and running the football. And then as soon as Miles Sanders gets injured, forget it. Why did you have to abandon? What happened there? Were you not able to adjust when you have Kenneth Gainwell and Boston Scott? Just plug and play, keep going, keep rolling with that. And that's a problem right there. And they seem to have difficulty adjusting. And that is a coaching issue. And of course, the defensive side, everything that Jonathan Gannon's doing is not working. And when you hear guys like veterans like Fletcher Cox and Rodney McLeod, Fletcher Cox flat out criticized him, and Rodney McLeod did we can only do what the play is called, or we go out there and execute the plays that are called. That's kind of throwing your defensive coordinator under the bus. And Nick Sirianni, to my surprise, has been critical of Jonathan Gannon. And usually coaches are more protective of their coordinators, but they've got an issue there on the defensive side of the ball. I think that has to be coaching. There's a talent issue, as you said, with the linebackers, but the coaching isn't helping them out. And when you look at Fletcher Cox talk about having to defense screen passes and say he's not paid to do that, it looked like on one particular play that, in fact, was what he was supposed to do. And why in the world would you have a 6-time Pro Bowl defensive tackle have to play a running back or defend, guard, cover a running back on a screen pass? I don't know what that scheme is.
Yeah, and you asked Nick Sirianni on Monday, about what Fletcher said. Is the criticism valid? And I hate the whole, we're constantly working. We're looking at everything. We got to evaluate the tape. No, that is an answer that says we don't know what the problem is, right? Like, instead of identifying the problem, you're saying we're looking at everything. That's a way of saying we don't know where we're going with this, man. So it tells me Gannon said something today, and it just tells me, he says, he's asked what kind of, when the game's over, let me bring up the actual
the accountability question.
The accountability, the first question. What's the accountability factor? And he says, well, every day what do we want to try to do to win the game this week? No, not what we want to try to do to win this game this week. How do we fix why we keep losing last week and the week before and the week before that? They don't know how to fix what they're doing wrong, and therefore they can't figure out how to win because they don't know how to fix their problems. They're just looking at games saying, how do we win games? No, you got to figure out how to fix the problems you have.
Yeah, and unless they feel that these problems they have are a combination of, one, not having the talent to execute what they want to do. But if that's the case, we heard when you came in here in Jonathan Gannon and both Nick Sirianni's case, we're going to fit our scheme to the strengths of the players. You're not doing that. You're not doing that, right? Not at all. You're not devising a game plan that's catered around the strengths of your players when they're complaining that they don't like what's being asked of them to do. So they were either they were just saying that and putting it out there to appease people and not really following through with it, or they don't know how to devise a scheme, which is even more, Rob, right? That's the bigger problem.
What is the balance? Okay, John Gannon, you hired me because this is what I do. This is my defensive idea. You hired me. That got me hired. Now, after you hired me, when I pitched you my idea, you're telling me my idea is not what you want me to do? What's the balance there?
And when Jonathan Gannon was hired, what was that plan? What was that idea? What did he sell Nick Sirianni on? What did he sell? I would imagine he sat down with Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie, because the defensive coordinator hire is a pretty important thing on a football team. It's not like hiring a wide receivers coach, a running backs coach, a quality control assistant, whatever you want to call it. Those have to be run by the top front office. And I don't know what he sat there and sold them on, but whatever it is, and it's not working, now you have to take a step back and redo the whole thing. This is where it becomes even a bigger problem. What do they do defensively? Do they suddenly become more aggressive? And is that going against everything Jonathan Gannon preaches? Is that not his style? Clearly it hasn't been the first 7 weeks. They play two deep safety. They don't want to give up any deep plays. They're very passive, and teams are picking them. You're looking at quarterbacks about to set right now on pace to set an NFL record for highest completion percentage allowed defensively. And they're at 74+%.
Rob, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, it's like Didinger said the other day, it looks like a 7-on-7 every week. I mean, it's preposterous. I've never seen it like guys are running free all over the place, and then nobody can tackle. The whole idea is let them catch underneath, somebody tackle. Nobody can tackle.
Not with this linebacker core, right? You can't. And the strength of the team was supposed to be the defensive line. I can't believe that losing Brandon Graham, as good as he is, coming off a Pro Bowl season, but as good as Brandon Graham is, losing him should not have been this much of a factor that suddenly you can't generate a pass rush.
Right.
That all of a sudden you can't get to a quarterback. Quarterbacks are untouchable. They come out clean. They don't have to wash their uniform after a game. I don't think they got a lick. I can't even remember. And I was at the Buccaneers game watching that one on TV. I can't remember them getting a lick or a shot against Derek Carr. What's happened to the defensive line? It's a problem.
Well, I mean, you hear what Fletcher Cox is saying. I'm used to being aggressive, and now they're asking me not to do that. And then, he's compensating for the fact that the linebackers stink, so he's getting himself kind of caught trying to do too much, and now it's making him look bad because he's trying to compensate for the fact that he knows the guys behind him can't help him out. So you got this whole domino effect of if these guys aren't good, He tries to do too much, and then that forces him not to be good. They got big problems on that defensive side of the ball. But offensively, you mentioned it. They come out, they run the ball, they ran play action, bang, Dallas Goedert, 24 yards over the middle, Gainwell's little out of the backfield, touchdown right down the field. And then they went right back to crap.
I don't know. Is it losing Miles Sanders? Because he got injured on the second series. When he gets 6 carries for 30 yards on the first series, was that an indication that Miles Sanders was going to get the ball 30 times or something? That all of a sudden you lose Miles Sanders and you can't do anything else? I thought Kenneth Gainwell can run the ball pretty well. And as I know Boston Scott has been seldomly used, but I feel like when you put him in there, and you saw him run for a touchdown.
They have won games. They have won games by featuring Boston Scott. I mean, the 3 games they played the best in is when Scott, the 2 times to beat the Giants, Boston Scott dominate.
Yeah, so I'm
not asking it to be Derrick Henry, by the way, but for God's sakes.
I guess the game plan was come out, do this, and then go back to what they were doing before. And it doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. I think this offensive game plan, we've seen it now week in and week out, where they struggle through the first 3 quarters. At least in this one, they came out strong, and then they struggled for the next 2.5 quarters. And all of a sudden, when the game's out of reach, they start scoring touchdowns. Mike, they have 18 offensive touchdowns this year, 18 in 7 games. 7 of those 18 touchdowns on offense have come after they trailed by 19.
Yeah.
When the game's out of reach.
Yeah. They're scoring 22 points a game, which, they're giving up 26. So I don't know which is worse, the offense or the defense. I don't know who I have more faith to fix it. I just feel like right now, sadly, I'm not an irrational guy, Rob, but I feel these 2 guys are in over their heads. I really do. I mean, I've never seen a team that constantly looks this unprepared. There's no adjustments, constantly getting their butts whipped.
Mike, I think there's a reason why Nick Sirianni wasn't considered for any of the other head coaching jobs. I was looking at the list of head coaching, the vacancies, and the teams and the coaches that they interviewed, right? Or requested to interview. I was looking at this the other day. And obviously we know he didn't get an interview with anyone else, but all the other guys who were on that list got multiple interviews. So the Eagles found themselves somebody who, yes, he was in Indianapolis. Yes, he's a disciple of Frank Reich, but it certainly doesn't seem like he was prepared to be an NFL head coach, coupled with the talent they have.
How much, Rob, do you think they banked on the relationship with Reich, trying to get him to keep Wentz from wanting to leave?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure because I kind of feel like they already knew going into that coaching search where things stood and where that relationship was. And I don't believe that was – I don't think that was as much their thinking as bringing in another young, inexperienced head coach who's going to be somebody who's not going to demand to have say over personnel, who's going to allow Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman to have all the input that they want to have. This is what this organization does. And then it reached a point with Doug Peterson where he had enough of it, and Nick Sirianni isn't successful enough to say anything about that, and he may not last. And now, if it's in fact a one and done, you're going to start seeing behind the scenes, Mike. You're going to start seeing a little bit of information being sources telling people, and the Eagles trying to spin that narrative, because then you have a GM who should be on the hot seat who's going to try and save his job by throwing the head coach on it hasn't happened yet, but I would look for this in the coming weeks.
Last one, I'll leave you with this, Rob, because this was the last line of questioning yesterday. Have you considered making a change at quarterback? Sirianni, no. Is there a point in which you would like to see Gardner at all? Is that a fair line of questioning already?
I think it's fair because Jalen has been so inconsistent and inaccurate. And here's my stance on this. I have said and will continue to say Jalen Hurts needs a full season to properly evaluate him. But because now, 7 games in, we have so many questions about Nick Sirianni's offense and his scheme, and we're seeing Jalen Hurts trend downward instead of upward, I don't want to bench Jalen Hurts and keep him on the bench. I would like to see if Gardner Minshew, for one game and one game only, can execute Nick Sirianni's offense any better so I can get a clear understanding or maybe even a little more of an inkling. Is the problem Sirianni's offense? Is it Jalen's execution of it? Or is it what's the deal here? And if you do that, yeah, you risk the possibility that Gardner Minshew comes in and leads them to a W, and then you can't bench him, and now all of a sudden it goes that way. I'm willing to take that chance, and I'm willing to do it only for 1 week. And I don't care if Gardner Minshew goes out there and he's 31 for 34 for 324 yards. I know he's not the long-term future answer. I need to find out about Jalen Hurts, but I would do it for 1 week at some point.
Rob Motti, Associated Press, and of course, he'll be back on Thursday. We'll look at Detroit. If they lose to Detroit, my God, you could see an organizational shift here. Some big-time changes could happen. Rob will be back to break all that down. Follow him at Rob Motti and check it out at the Associated Press. And, of course, Faith on the Field this Saturday and Sunday here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Rob, we'll talk to you then.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it, bud.
All right, there's Rob Motti, of course, Tuesdays and Thursdays with us right here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, coming up, we'll close out the show. Josh is got game night tonight. He's down at the PFL in Miami. He'll be doing it live from there. I got you till 6. We'll close out the show with final thoughts next. All right. By the way, Gardner Minshew in 2019 as a rookie was 6-6 for the Jags. He had 21 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. Last year for Jacksonville, he was 1-7, but he completed 66% of his passes. He had 16 touchdowns and 5 interceptions for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He also, this is where Gardner Minshew is kind of intriguing because he runs the ball a little bit. He ran the ball 67 times for 344 yards as a rookie. And last year, he ran the ball 29 times for 153 yards. He averages 5 yards per carry as a rusher. So he's not a statuesque quarterback in there. Interesting point there by Rob Motti saying, hey, why not just, see if he can run this offense? I think a lot of people are interested in what Minshew does. By the way, some of his best games, 279 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had a big game one year. In his first year, he had 374 yards and 2 touchdowns in a game. Last year, he had 339 yards and 3 touchdowns, 351 and 2 touchdowns, 302 touchdowns. Minshew's a serviceable quarterback. I wouldn't say he's a franchise quarterback, right? Of course not. That's our final thoughts today. Josh is coming up next. Game Night Live. I'm out of here. For all the people on the video, appreciate you guys watching on the 97.3 ESPN YouTube channel. Share, subscribe, do it all. We'll be back tomorrow. Mike McGarry's here. Jason Fitz is here. He's going to rub it in that the Raiders beat up on the Eagles pretty good. Jeff Mocher's here. Fine 5, Ugly 5. Joe Valerio and more. Talk to you then here on the Sports Bash.